rampant among the guests. Checking in under drama, anyone? Don't miss Seaside Hotel tonight at 10 on GBH 44.
The weekend is coming with stories.
My family took an extreme camping trip. It was like Swiss Family Robinson meets Lord of the Flies.
Gardening.
I never worry about aphids on milkweed. Ladybugs eat aphids. A lot of things do.
And DIY delights.
What are some of the environmental issues with lead paint?
I've got hundreds of pounds of lead on my house. Do I really want the painter to come down and blow it all over the neighborhood?
That's how we do weekends on GBH 89.7. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Brady, head on the 11 o'clock hour BPR. We'll start, though, with the latest Trump-fueled international distraction as he tacos on Greenland, makes no sense at Davos, and worries about the midterms. Political commentator and podcaster Chuck Todd zooms in to help make sense of it all.
I'm Marjorie Egan. That is practically a moldy BPR chestnut, but nonetheless, we revisit the debate on age limits because of what's happened this week. Should judges, Congress, and yes, presidents step aside at 75? Rahm Emanuel says yes. And is mandatory retirement the way to reset and save the Democratic Party and our entire political system? Call or text next on the 11 o'clock hour at BPR, GBH, and NEPM.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corby Kummer. President Trump has presided over a signing ceremony for his Board of Peace. Willem Marks reports the public ceremony was at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and initially focused on Gaza.
Trump called himself a real estate person at heart in his closing remarks after he and leaders from more than a dozen nations, including Argentina, Pakistan, and Mongolia, signed membership documents for the Board of Peace. Trump will chair the organization overseeing the ceasefire and future reconstruction in Gaza, with a reported billion-dollar price tag for permanent membership. The UK and France have said they will not sign the treaty in its current form. Officials from Germany, China, and Italy have expressed concerns. Belgium insisted it had not signed despite a White House statement that the country would participate in today's ceremony. Russian state media reported that President Vladimir Putin is willing to pay for Russia's membership with frozen assets in the US. For NPR News, I'm Willem Marks in Davos, Switzerland.
European leaders are meeting today to talk about President Trump's demand to take over Greenland. He said yesterday he would not use military force to annex the world's biggest island. It's controlled by NATO ally Denmark. Trump has repeatedly said the U.S. needs Greenland to protect it from Russia and China. NPR's Anthony Kuhn reports China objects to being called a threat.
NATO spokesperson Alison Hart said the negotiations between Denmark, Greenland, and the United States will try to ensure that Russia and China do not gain economic or military footholds in Greenland. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Guo Jiakun countered that China opposes the practice of creating something out of nothing and using China as an excuse for selfish gain. In 2018, China published plans to add Arctic shipping routes to its Belt and Road infrastructure strategy. Beijing argues that all nations have a right to conduct activities in the Arctic, and it insists that its activities promote peace, stability, and sustainable development and comply with international law. Anthony Kuhn, NPR News, Seoul.
Former Special Counsel Jack Smith is testifying before the House Judiciary Committee this morning. He's been insisting that lawmakers question him publicly about his investigations into Donald Trump. Trump was accused of working to overturn the 2020 presidential election, and he was charged with mishandling classified documents. Smith says he is neither a politician nor a partisan in any way, and his work reflects that.
I made my decisions without regard to President Trump's political association, activities, beliefs, or candidacy in the 2024 election. President Trump was charged because the evidence established that he willfully broke the law, the very laws he took an oath to uphold.
President Trump has denied all the charges which have been dropped. He claims Smith is a criminal and should be put in prison. On Wall Street, the Dow is up 364 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. New Hampshire lawmakers are eyeing a number of bills that would make things more expensive for out-of-state visitors. The proposals include raising state park fees for non-residents and higher tolls for drivers without a New Hampshire Easy Pass. Supporters say it's about fairness as New Hampshire residents face higher fees when they visit neighboring states like Massachusetts. New Hampshire Governor Kelly Ayotte opposes raising tolls, but a bipartisan group of state senators is backing the idea as part of a 10-year highway funding plan. And leave it to a pair of neighbors who run a small coffee roastery in Marblehead to jump on the Drake May bandwagon and release Drake May Coffee. Just in time for Sunday's AFC Championship game, Pats fans can now buy bags of Wake with Drake on the Bond Coffee Roasters website. But know that when it's gone, it's gone. Bond co-founder Chris Buchanan tells Mass Live that Wake with Drake is a blend of Ethiopian beans, and the package features a quarterback wearing number 10 in a jersey that may or may not look similar to the Patriots' red throwback jerseys. Buchanan says the image was created with the help of AI. He adds that he and his partner got the idea for the coffee after seeing Drake May beer. Elsewhere in sports, the Bruins host the Vegas Golden Knights at the Garden tonight. It's day 5 at the Australian Open. Time to gas up the shovel. Lots of snow heading our way as we head late into the weekend. It is 40 degrees in Boston right now, 41 in Springfield. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Luminescence Foundation. Luminescence Foundation is dedicated to shedding light on neurological research focused on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases and supporting land conservation initiatives. This is NPR.
You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, Jim Browdy and Marjorie Eakin. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. Tuesday at the Boston Public Library, we'll be joined by State Auditor Diana DeZoglio.
By the way, and remember, when we had the Attorney General last week, she said, I'm going to provide you questions that you can read to the auditor so we can advance this back and forth on the ballot question.
The plot thickens.
It does thicken. Margaret.
Okay. And next Friday, we'll be joined by the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. She'll be at the library from noon to 1. And thank you to our bosses at GBH. On February 2nd, Jim and I will be on the air from 11 to 1 as GBH launches the Curiosity Desk show at 1 o'clock every day. Hello, Jim.
2-hour show is what we're telling you, starting the first week of February. Here now via Zoom. Boy, can I not wait to talk to him. Political analyst Chuck Todd. Chuck's former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press and host of the show Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere. He's also host of the Chuck Toddcast, which you can find at thechucktoddcast.com or youtube.com/@thechucktoddcast. Hello there, Chuck.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Okay, so I guess we have over there in Greenland, not Iceland, a framework for something. So when does the taco president announce victory and have a signing ceremony?
I bet you didn't know there was Tex-Mex in Davos, right? You know,
I don't know.
Tacos were on the menu on that. Well, look, I mean, this is what, this is his warped view of the art of the deal, right? Take a maximalist position and everybody tries to appease in some form or another. But look, there was real damage done with this that, it's like every time he does one of these things, fewer people will snap back, right? And, yes, he backed down on the tariffs targeting Western Europe. But that Mark Carney speech, which is still the most important thing that took place in Davos, I think, long term, okay, where he said, look, we've got to no longer, we are in a different era. And he was essentially saying the fact that the United States has decided it's going to behave more like China and Russia means we all have no choice but to essentially survive as middle powers. So we've got to band together and work with everybody, because if we don't, we're all going to get eaten individually. And he's right. I think this is the current situation you're in. If you're the Prime Minister of Canada, you kind of have no choice. But, this is the irony here is, Donald Trump, there was a whole movement, particularly on the right, there was a whole fear of China movement. on the right. And, we had to, and we got Canada to, not use their telecom services, Huawei, and we did all these things. And now we abandoning Canada and we target Canada the way Trump has done this. And now they cut a big deal with China. And now China is in our backyard. We're going to start seeing Chinese electric vehicles in Michigan, in Minnesota, in Ohio, right? Because they're going to start being sold in Canada. And all of a sudden, we've given away a great business partner to the Chinese. Heck of a job with this America First business.
The latest update out of Davos, other than the ridiculous signing ceremony for the so-called Board of Peace thing.
Do you see the countries on this Board of Peace,
I did. There are
Jim?
19 of them.
Yeah,
Well, explain who
people.
they are and what the deal is.
Well, you know who's not on there? Every traditional American ally.
Exactly.
Right?
I know.
This is what America First gets you. Belarus. Are you kidding me? Basic Belarus? This is a Board of Peace, a puppet of Putin's.
Yeah.
Okay? Look, Indonesia is an absolute important large democracy that we do need. I mean, not everybody on this list is a terrible country to have on your list, but this is who wants to stand with Trump's America.
Armenia,
Belarus,
Azerbaijan,
Morocco,
Bulgaria,
Vietnam.
Hungary, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, Kazakhstan, Hungary are barely democracies. Basically, they're just run the way Trump wants to run things, which is kind of like, the president is the mob boss. That's kind of how Belarus works, except he's a deputy to Putin, right? Kazakhstan has its own, Qatar is what it is, I mean, Indonesia, I'm looking here. I think Indonesia is the only true democracy on this list.
Borat signed at the ceremony today.
Man, you're laughing. If you told me he pulled it off, I wouldn't be shocked that he could show up at that signing ceremony.
But the reason I introduced this, I hope I'm reading this wrong, but the latest New York Times dispatch from Davos is, here's the headline, live update, Zelensky criticizes European allies after meeting with Trump. Now, they gave him a standing ovation when he spoke. Tell me that he didn't do that because he knew that that's what he had to do to cozy up to Trump, is to trash the Western European allies who have been totally with him. Is that what that's about?
That's exactly what that's about.
Oh, my God.
He's got to make Trump feel better because Trump, the only way he survives if Trump continues to sell weapons to NATO so NATO can transfer it and sell it to Ukraine, right? There are two things that still matter. The fact that he created, he, for whatever reason, right? He doesn't want to look like he's directly giving weapons to Ukraine, so they did this sort of back. The amount of gymnastics that's done to appease Trump, right, by various entities, whether it's our domestic politics, corporate America, Europeans. At some point, you do see why some of them are like, you know what, we're done.
Yeah.
And it does. I think what's fascinating is it does feel like Macron, who, by the way, spent the entire first Trump term trying to appease him, right? And he's basically like, I'm out, right? And the German chancellor's like, I'm out. And France and Germany basically call all the shots with the EU. So let's my other guess here is that in European democracies, guess who's not popular these days? America.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it. I don't mean to go all patriotic here, but it really hurts in some ways. And I'm glad that so many of the greatest generals this. I mean, I think of my long dead father. This is a really sad thing for the United States, no longer to be viewed as trustworthy, reliable. We'll make a deal and sign a deal and keep the deal. It really hurts.
If you travel to Europe, Marjorie, I'd go get a backpack with a maple leaf on it.
Yeah.
Well, so this is not something that we talked about this yesterday. This is not if a sane Democrat is elected in 3 years, or even a sane Republican.
We're not going to fix this.
You can't just reverse this thing overnight.
You can have good personal, right. The next president may be able to have good personal relations, but how do you convince a country to cut a deal with the country of America, right?
And the people of America, because even though Trump's numbers are down, what is he at 35%? Yeah. Millions and millions of Americans elected this guy and are standing by this guy. So it says something about what's happened to us. You know?
Well, I did a little history lesson the other day in my Substack just to remind people, we always lionize our past, right? And look, 100% of Americans weren't with Europe in World War II. Right?
That's true.
100% of Americans weren't anti-fascist. There's always been this sort of 35%, right? And inside the Republican Party, I like to remind people, Eisenhower was reluctant, the Republicans only turned to an internationalist like Eisenhower after they lost the presidency for 24 straight years.
Yeah, you made that point.
They were an America First party that was, unpopular. And, but it was that was like a 52-48 decision by Republicans, right? And it gave us 70 years of, Eisenhower to Romney, right? That was they were all within the realm of America plays an important role in the world, our allies are our power, et cetera, right? And Trump has reverted back to this isolationist policy, which, look, the policies in the 1920s and the 1930s helped create the conditions for World War II. When the biggest economic power in the world decides to raise barriers, what do you think everybody else is going to do?
But aren't we supposed to learn from history so we don't make the same mistakes? And part of what I think is the problem is we don't know our history. I don't think Donald Trump knows our history.
He doesn't get, even if he knew
I hate
it,
to sit here, I hate to take it's a cheap shot, right? But he doesn't read.
Yeah.
He's never been interested in what I call the story of America, right? I'm a huge, do you believe in the story of America and you want to write a chapter? He doesn't believe in the story of America. He just wants to erase everything and say life begins with Trump. Right? Like he is so narcissistic about this, which is why I like to tell my Republican friends, you know what he doesn't care about? The future of the Republican Party.
Or the future of the country.
No, it's when he's done, it's all going to be garbage and trash because he's not involved.
I hope our listeners don't get upset when I say this because now we say this every single day. There's a headline on my pile here. You may be familiar with it. At what point is conventional political analysis moot? That's you. We've just engaged in 10 minutes of discussion like we have a sane president of the United States. He is totally, the line, beyond the Iceland thing yesterday, which I think was senility, when he said the line, I know you shouldn't laugh when the world is falling apart. When he said, if it were not for us, you'd all be speaking German in a room where probably everybody speaks German.
We're in Switzerland. It's the native language.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
I mean, he is so far gone. I watched, actually, I didn't do it till last night. I didn't tell you.
What?
I watched a whole hour and 44 minutes of the press thing in the press room from the day before last night. Talk about sick, meaning me, for doing this thing. He is so gone. It is
It's like self-water torture, Jim.
It totally is. What do people, elected officials who actually care about democracy? I said to Marjorie, I noticed in the last, I'd say 3 days, almost every Democrat I've seen on television has used the word insane, senile, or something, meaning they got a memo saying it's now okay to say those things. But what do we do about that? What do they do about that? He's nuts.
Well, I'm glad I appreciate you making talking about my headline because that's kind of how, because if you look at this conventionally, this is terrible politics for him. Everything he's been doing the last month has made it, I right now, I think there's a massive blue wave building. Okay? This is, when you look at the situation, Trump's already in worse shape now than George W. Bush was at this time in 2006. And the Republican Party is in a messy situation. The only thing they got going for him is that we may have some really messy Democratic primaries that perhaps nominate people that are going to have a hard time in general elections.
Yeah, you talk about that in your podcast. Yeah. What do you tell people what you think? What's problematic for these primaries going forward? Because a lot of people, Democrats, are counting on them, and you're saying not so fast.
Well, there's a couple of specific. For me, it's specifically about the Senate, right? Which is, if Democrats don't win the Senate, it's likely because they got the wrong nominee in Texas and the wrong nominee in Michigan. Where there are two, and possibly the wrong nominee in Minnesota, right?
How about Maine? Why are you not saying Maine?
Because two things. One, I'm still, until she files, I'm not convinced Susan Collins is running.
Really?
I'm not, look, she hasn't filed yet.
I didn't know that.
When she files, and maybe she will, but it's interesting to me, She's never been this unpopular before re-election, right? The last time she still had some personal popularity, that at least allowed her numbers to look even. But she's unpopular with the right wing and she's unpopular with the left wing, right? She's got the Mitch McConnell problem.
Yeah.
She's got the Chuck Schumer problem, right? People in her own party don't like her and people in the other party don't like her, right? Which then makes your numbers look that much worse.
But I interrupted you. Go back to those other 3 states.
And what's wrong with the candidates that they may elect?
Well, it's just ideological, right?
Okay.
You're going to have you've got a guy, one of the 3 candidates, the progressive candidate in Michigan, Abdul El-Sayed, great candidate. I mean, just a really good political athlete, as you know, it's a phrase I like to use.
Yeah.
But he's pretty strident on the Gaza issue, and Israel will be a really bright line, and it could get very uncomfortable for Democrats up there. Never mind that there's a 3-way governor's race. The Republican nominee for Senate is not super MAGA. Yes, he's got Trump's endorsement, but it's one of those that they've got a very electable candidate. Now, do I think the national environment makes it that much harder for Republican nominees in these swing states? I do. And Texas could simply, the Texas situation, right? You got Jasmine Crockett, who is very polarizing, right? There are people that love her, and there are people that think that she's too hot, too hot for this Senate race. Versus the pastor, right? Who's probably personality-wise the complete opposite of Jasmine
He's
Crockett.
Interesting. I heard him.
And I completely agree. And what I find interesting about that primary is that I actually think it captures sort of both. There's sort of multiple divides inside the Democratic Party. Some of it is ideological, right? But some of it is sentiment, right? Do you want a fighter, or do you want a uniter, right?
Yeah.
Crockett's a fighter. Tallarico's a uniter, right? Why is Gavin Newsom shot to the top? He's been a fighter, right? So there's a certain part, and I get it, right? Look, we saw it inside the Republican Party. Trump was the fighter, while you had people like John Kasich and back then and Rubio trying to run as quote unquote a conservative uniter. And what did the primary electorate want? They wanted blood. They wanted a fight, and I think Democrats want to fight. So, but I don't know whether general election will. That said, Ken Paxton, who's not kind of a crook, is a proven crook. His own party impeached him.
That's right.
His own party, right, impeached him. I mean, I kind of think it's what our politics deserves, right? Crockett and Paxton, I'm here for the popcorn, but my gosh, right? The point is, though, is that that possibility is out there, and because you do have I think a primary electorate on the Democratic side that is just tired, looks and said, hey, we tried the uniting front, right? And it didn't work. All right. It just didn't work. I think you're seeing that with the Europeans, right? They tried to appease and they tried. So, and this is where these are just, this is where it's uncharted waters, unprecedented, pick your word. We're going to go in directions that are harder for us to see at the moment because there is so much pent up frustration with the current situation.
We're talking to Chuck Todd.
Chuck, I wonder if you share my unease about the elections altogether. That I fear that some of the crew that put together Project 2025 are working 24/7 to ways to make it harder for people to vote, to have people at the polls, intimidating people, to undermine mail-in voting, et cetera, that we may have very unfair elections. Do you worry about that?
I worry. I got a question about this. Actually, it's on in my Q&A portion today. That's up now about concern about will we have fair elections in the midterms? What's your level of concern on this? And I will say I'm more worried about the post-election moments, the certification processes, if they're close, right? If you have a blowout, if it's a Democratic blowout, I'm not concerned. It's when it's tight, right? When have we had the most shenanigans, attempted shenanigans? It's when you only need a little bit, right? When you have to make up a massive gulf, right? The fraud arguments just never take hold. But if it's really close, like if you're telling me the House is let's say the Democrats pick up the House, but you're looking at less than 5 seats total. And you tell me that Mike Johnson may try to not seat these folks. Maybe there's an attempt not to certify, right? I think it's, put it this way, the chances aren't zero anymore that we'll see behavior like that. I'm mostly assuming we won't see that behavior, but I don't want to I can't rule that out, right? I'm not blind to the last 10 years. But I think it's more of the closer the results are, the more I'm concerned about that. The bigger the blowout.
Yeah.
And right now, I think it's more likely we see a blowout than tight. And it's just look at all the polling. It's universal. It doesn't matter. It's got the crappy pollsters and the good pollsters are all showing the same thing.
Hey, Chuck, before you go, we're going to revisit with our listeners in a minute or two a topic we've done only about 3,000 times on the radio about age limits for Supreme Court justices, members of Congress, president. The most recent person to embrace it is Rahm Emanuel, who's sort of running for president. It's unclear if he is or not. Well, beyond the whole issue about whether or not you got to change the Constitution, forget the process. Conceptually, what do you think about the notion?
I think it's one of those 80-20 issues. You ever seen it polled? Everybody's like, definitely should have age limits. This is almost universal. It's Rahm's been very clever on some of these things, right? He's been taking the 80-20 positions like, hey, we should not have social media. We should not have phones in schools, which is turning out to be an 80-20 issue now with parents. And we should have age limits. I don't think it's that controversial. That's one of these things, the problem is, I know you said don't bring up the process. There's only one way you can do this. It has to be in the Constitution.
Yeah.
Because once you put age minimums in the Constitution, you took that power away from the legislative branches to be able to put eligibility. The fact that eligibility is a constitutional rule on age eligibility, then you have to, I kind of think, and by the way, let me throw something out there.
30 seconds.
I would lower the age minimums. Right now we have House is 25, Senate 30, presidency 35. I think age minimums 25 across the board, 75 maximum. If you're going to rewrite it, that's what I'd do. I'd get rid of the tiered youthful system.
Right.
Well, if you want to call in during our discussion, it's 877-301-8970, okay?
Awesome.
Chuck, I hope we're going to see you soon.
We are, I think.
I think we are.
That'd be great.
Good to
Thank
see
you
Chuck
very
Todd.
much.
Be well.
Okay.
Take care.
We've been speaking with political analyst Chuck Todd, former moderator at NBC's Meet the Press, and host of the show Sunday with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere. He's also host of the Chuck Toddcast, which, if you are a political junkie, is great listening. You can find it at thechucktoddcast.com or at youtube.com at the Chuck Toddcast. Okay, coming up, we're going to talk about what Jim just talked with Chuck about, term limits. You think it's 75 and out? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Brady. This is BPR, GBH, NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Claire Foy, the British actor whose nuanced work has ranged from playing the ill-fated Anne Boleyn in Wolf Hall to her award-winning portrayal of a young Queen Elizabeth II in The Crown. She joins us to talk about her latest film, H is for Hawk, adapted from Helen Macdonald's best-selling memoir, in which a grieving woman gives her life over to falconry and finding her way into a fierce hawk. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Riverstone International US LLC, located in Beverly, Massachusetts. A Riverstone International company acquiring legacy insurance globally since 2010. Learn more at rsml.co.uk. And Bonsai Bar, hosting pop-up beginner bonsai workshops at breweries across New England. Hands-on classes provide guidance in the basics of bonsai design and care in a group setting. More at bonsaibar.com.
Welcome back to BPR and NEPM and GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Brady, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're at the library tomorrow, Tuesday, also at the library. What is my point? Oh, yeah, Tuesday.
I don't know, Jim.
State Auditor Diana DiZoglio is going to be there Tuesday. Friday, the governor is going to be there. And a reminder, February 2nd is our first 11 to 1 day, reduced to 2 hours. We are, I have to say, are we allowed to say we're thrilled? We are thrilled. And not because we don't love the show. We totally love the show.
We're talking about age limits here, Jim.
Yeah, well, thank you. Let's move on from that. And Curiosity Desk with Edgar B. Herrick III is going to start that day from 1 to 2. So the president is nearly 80 years old. His increasingly irrational actions on the world stage have some re-upping the argument about age limits for people in positions of power in this country. Rahm Emanuel is the former mayor of Chicago, former White House chief of staff for Obama. He's mulling a run for president himself. Here he is speaking at the Center for American Progress think tank.
Government, 75 years, you're out. You're 75 years old, done. Clean it up. And when you're 75, you can't do that in the military. You can't do it in corporate America. It should not be in the government as well. Thank you for your service. Up and out.
Woof. So the lines are open. Biden was 81 when he dropped out of his re-election bid. We all saw his performance at that disastrous debate. But how about 5 years sooner? Is there a good argument that people across our electoral politics should be forced out on their 75th birthday? As he said, thanks for your service. Up and out, as that guy said. Or is it a mistake to put a hard and fast rule in public service? Sort of elder statesman or woman argument, leaving decades of experience and wisdom on the table. 877-301-8897. Two things let me just say before we even start. When Chuck was saying you can't ignore the constitutional issue, we're going to try to ignore it for the next 20 or 30 minutes. However, it's important to note there are only two ways that I'm aware of, I'm pretty sure I'm right, to amend the United States Constitution. One, it starts in the House and Senate, where 2/3 have to vote for it, which means it would never happen. There's another way where I think is it 2/3 of the states? I think it's 2/3 of the states petition Congress to convene a constitutional convention, but that's never been done in American history. So for purposes of this discussion, we want to discuss the concept, not the constitutional inhibitors, if you think it's a good idea. 877-301-8970. I of course, I've written about it. We've talked about it on the show.
Another brilliant piece in the Boston Globe.
Thank you very much. Well, not recently, a while ago. And what do you think about it?
Well, I think something must be going on in Rahm and Zeke Emanuel's family, because Zeke Emanuel was saying everybody should be dead at 75.
No, he didn't say that. Dr. Emanuel wrote a piece, something, what was it called? How I Want to Die at 70.
Yeah.
His point was, I'm happy to live late. The issue is, if I'm not in great shape.
Just pull the plug.
Yeah, pull the plug, unless I'm
and then
raring to
now
go.
Brother Rahm is becoming a guy that's going to carry. There's a thing about 75 in that family. I wonder if their parents were over 75 when they started this crusade.
So what do you think about this?
I think it's obvious. What is
obvious?
I mean, we do have that Maduro judge who's, what is he, 92?
92.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think I think he's one of those you volunteer to come back thing. I'm talking
emeritus
about
judge.
If you're a normal judge.
I think it's
By
fine.
the way, you know who on the Supreme Court I'm 90% sure is over 75? Your two favorite justices, Alito and Thomas. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I was stunned when I look at this, at how many people. I mean, Chuck Grassley's 91. This was written, by the way, in 25, this piece I'm reading, so maybe he's 92 by now.
Well, generally, if you're still alive and you were 91 last year, is a fairly good chance.
Well, I'm not sure what month, Jim. You know what I mean? What month it was written. But
Hannah told us 82 members of Congress are over 70 years old right now.
I mean, some of them are really old. Bernie Sanders, who seems to be doing great, by the way, is 83. Mitch McConnell's not doing so great. He's 83. People out in California, I didn't know Maxine Waters is 86, and some guy from Kentucky's 87. I mean, that's crazy. And we all know that Dianne Feinstein, that was really horrible to see her clearly suffering from dementia in her last days.
But the other side of the argument is just what you said. Dianne Feinstein shouldn't have been there, but Bernie Sanders is totally coherent and together. Should he be there? So the question remains, do you support a 75-year-old cap?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, I do.
By the way, I want to say just that...
By the way, you were always saying Ted Kennedy should be the exception, Jim.
Yeah, well, you should be able to make exceptions. I support a 75-year-old age cap.
How many exceptions would you make?
Whatever ones I think merit staying. By the way, just let me throw it back to you.
Okay, you're going to make an exception for Bernie?
Let's throw it back at you for a second.
Yes.
Do you remember when you used to say that I think you even used the word I hated Nancy Pelosi? Because I used to say
always criticized her.
She was the most successful speaker in the history. Effective. You missed my point. No, you didn't miss my point. You just wanted to embarrass me. The point I was trying to make is the three House leaders under Pelosi of the Democratic Party, you know what they shared? They were all octogenarians. all in their 80s
Steny
at
Hoyer,
the end.
the guy that was her number 2.
He just said he wasn't running.
He's 85. Well,
yeah, he just
thank
said he's
God
not running for re-election.
He's not running. I think it's going to be a big issue right here in Massachusetts with Ed Markey. Ed Markey's at every event. He works like a dog. He's very smart. He knows
by the way,
everything.
he acts like he's 40. I mean,
he's very youthful, but again, he's in his late 70s, I think?
I think he's in his 78, 70-something, like 77, yeah.
So,
that's
anyway,
the
somebody said the baby boomers have screwed everything up, so it's time for somebody else to come in and pick up the mantle.
877-301-8970. Rahm Emanuel, I mean, we've been talking about this for years. I don't mean that in the credit-giving kind of way. Rahm Emanuel's not the first, but there are, just so people know, there are no age floors or ceilings. Am I right about this on the Supreme Court? There are age floors for Congress, as Chuck just said, 25 to be a member of the House, 30 to be a member of the Senate. Remember Joe Biden, when he won the election, was not old enough to be sworn in? I think I'm right.
Yeah,
he turned 30 by the time of his swearing in.
You know what I learned today?
No.
That Ben Franklin would have been X'd out if...
How old was he?
Well, he was 81 at the time of signing, excuse me,
wasn't an
signing of the
official.
Constitution. I know, but he was 15 years older at 81 than any other signer of the Constitution. But today, he would not rank among the top 10 oldest members of Congress. I didn't
By the
know
way,
that.
the interesting thing, just since you were trashing Chuck Grassley, the Republican
I'm not trashing him. I'm just saying he's 91.
He said yesterday he actually did support an age limit, which should be 98. Which, I mean, you may disagree with the number, but he totally supports.
You also wonder at night. Ooh, we have to go. We're going to keep talking about this. But at 91, don't you want to relax a little bit?
These people.
Do you want to fly from Iowa to D.C.?
They want someone walking up to them and saying, "Your Excellency." That's all they give a damn. But they don't know life.
Well, but when you get to the point you can't hear them, you can't see them, you can't talk back to them. I don't know. Maybe it's time to say enough already and go home and be with your family. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. More of your calls and texts when we come back. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Should there be an age cutoff, 75 for people in high office?
Walking for years on end in places people aren't usually on foot, the police take notice. This world explorer tells us he's been stopped by authorities 120 times.
Yeah, I mean, I can laugh at it now, but it was actually very stressful.
That plus the day's top global news next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Direct Federal Credit Union, a Needham-based financial institution providing loans, saving solutions, and financial wellness resources for members across every stage of life. Learn more by visiting direct.com, Direct Federal, member NCUA. And Brown University Pre-College Programs, where high school students experience college life, nurture their diverse interests, and make friends and memories that last a lifetime. Applications available online at precollege.brown.edu.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are back at the library tomorrow with a terrific show. We hope you join us. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about age limits for politicians. Rahm Emanuel is the most reformed mayor of Chicago, former chief of staff for Obama, and arguably might be running for president. Just proposed 75-year-old age limit for Supreme Court justices, elected officials, federal elected officials, and including the President of the United States and members of Congress. How do you feel about it? 877-301-8970. You wanted to update people on something going on?
The Washington Post is reporting that Attorney General Pam Bondi has announced that she has arrested organizers of a anti-ICE protest that took place in a Minnesota church, civil rights attorney and member of the St. Paul School Board out there, and other people who were involved in organizing that protest.
Let's talk to Andrea Cabral about that.
That's kind of a big deal.
Isn't there a First Amendment deal going on?
That's what I thought, but where the Constitution is out the window, Jim.
Apparently
we know
it is.
In the Trump era. 877-301-8970 is the number. Let's go to Kate in
Amherst.
Thanks for
Kate.
calling, Kate.
Hi.
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you.
I agree that there should be a 75-year age limit. I think that's a great idea, but I also think it would be great if we had something similar to what we have in higher education and have like an emeritus position where these retired out politicians could give us their advice and their wisdom and their insight without maybe having the power.
What happens with a lot of judges, by the
Federal
way,
judges,
who actually do serve?
Yeah, they write opinions too.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. You have a lot of colleges, as Kate was saying, emeritus educators in colleges that stay on for years after they are actually officially not full-time professors, and federal judges. And thank goodness for the federal judges who have been very courageous.
Many. Katie, thank you for that. By the way, speaking of Amherst and higher education, I finally read that pension list in the Globe yesterday with, what is it, the top 10 pensioners, $349,000 for life.
Here's the thing
$280,000
with the pensions. You should have to wait till you're 65. I mean, people are hurting.
There should also be a ceiling. There
should be a ceiling.
By the way, David Holway is a friend of mine, who's president of Age, is quoted in that Globe story saying the average person is making whatever
40 or 50,000.
We're not talking about them. He is totally right.
Yep.
The notion that a public servant can go
350
decades for $350,000 a year.
Billy Bulger, that used to be head of the Senate, 278 or something like that.
He was president of UMass too.
That's right. He was president.
That's why his pension
president
is
of UMass, and I'm not sure why these people that are at UMass should be making. They're all at the top of the list, right?
Well, I'm not quarreling so much with their salaries doing important jobs. The question is the way the pension system is built.
Especially if you retire at 50.
Exactly. Let's go to Christine in Springfield.
We're talking about to that, Jim.
Age limit change my mind because I forgot that my position was. Christine in Springfield, welcome to the show. Hi.
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 So my thought is that I do think that there need to be age limits across all three branches of government. But I think it should be for politicians coming into office. It should be the day that they're entering office, because if someone turns 75 in the middle of their term, and they just have to go home at that point, then you have to have a lot of special elections, and also you're kind of overriding the will of the voters in the previous.
Well, by the way, I agree with you, and I don't want to speak for Rahm Emanuel. I don't think he meant that if you're 74 and you're elected, you gotta get pulled out of office. But
that
Christine,
you probably shouldn't be running.
But Christine, you could take your argument one step further when you say it's sort of violating the will of the people. A lot of people who oppose, we haven't had one yet, the 75-year limit, which you support and we support, say that's also taking away the will of voters. If the voters want to elect Chuck Grassley at 90 years old in Iowa, why shouldn't they be allowed to do it? If they think he's too old, vote against him.
I see that point, but I think that we've had a lot of examples, especially over the last several years, of people. You mentioned Dianne Feinstein. I would argue Chuck Grassley.
Well, Biden and Trump, I think you can say.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Well, Trump definitely, but I don't think that's necessarily his age, but that's another story.
Yeah.
I think there has to be a point. You could argue the opposite way. I don't agree with his 25-year-old minimum limit, because it's shown us that we're basically just becoming fully formed human beings at that point, where we can actually use our prefrontal cortex to make solid decisions.
Maybe 30. Maybe 30.
Yeah.
Well, right now, 25 is permissible for members of the House. Christine,
thank you.
Thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Remember former Texas Representative Kay Granger, who was 82?
She was in the
discovered at an assisted living facility because she had serious dementia issues.
They never told the public. She was not voting.
They never
and finally, I think it was local journalists investigated where the hell is she, and her staff had never told people that she was unable to vote or participate in debate because she was in this home or whatever it was.
Imagine that's like Woodrow Wilson's wife that never told the country that her husband was totally debilitated and she was running the country instead of her husband. That was pretty weird.
By the way, I was wrong when I said that both Alito and Thomas are 75. Thomas, I believe, is 76. Or no, he may be... he may be 7. Alito is. I take it back. Alito now is he's 75 or 76 years old. They're the only two that are over 75, and it'd be a great loss for this country if they were to disappear, wouldn't it? No, it would not. Okay, 87. Thank you.
Well, that's the fear. If they disappear during Trump's term, imagine who we'd get, and then they'd be 40.
But by the way, in a moment of seriousness, when you made the joke, and it wasn't a joke, because I did say when we first talked about this years ago, I think Kennedy's experience, and he was about to be, I don't know how old it was over whatever limit we were talking about, Ted Kennedy, who I think was the most effective senator maybe ever. You can't have exceptions to the rules. For example, I wrote a piece for the Globe a few years ago, and we can't find it. But I asked former Chief Justice Margaret Marshall if she supported. She said yes. And I said that would have meant that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who she thought was one of the great justices, would have had to step down. Should she? And the answer was yes.
Yeah, she should have stepped. That was.
That was for other reasons.
I mean, she did a wonderful job, but it's a stain on her legacy. I think that she stayed.
Well, that was because, but that wasn't so much as her age. It was because she stayed and because of her health. Obviously, she died under Trump rather than resigning under Obama.
Right.
So there could have been a sane justice, or at least a majoritarian justice.
Now, lots of the texters think that we need to do cognitive tests, and several of them have suggested the MCAS.
I know that's.
All those extra MCAS we have now, if you don't need them for graduation requirements, you can just segue over to the...
Do you know that those of us who opposed MCAS from the beginning, long before the ballot question last year, used to say when the legislature was contemplating doing it, let's have the legislators take the test? They would not do it. And why do you think that was?
Well, I wouldn't take that because of the math. The math would kill me.
Dasha on the North Shore, you're next. We're talking about 75-year-old age limit for elected officials and Supreme Court justices. Hi.
Hi. I don't know if I agree with the 75-year-old cap because I believe that some of the views that Bernie Sanders has are very in line with what us younger people think of because I'm in my 30s. Mm-hmm. But I do think 85 should be a cap for sure. And I do agree that younger, 25, would be a good idea. I think we need younger views to see what everyone is feeling throughout our country because I feel like we are not the America I grew up knowing. And it's kind of sad, to be completely honest.
Well, I think the sad part is absolutely true. And Dasha, really appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
And, I think it's also, like Dasha, people in their 30s are the ones that are getting so squeezed between their college loans, their unbelievably high rents, their inability to think they're ever going to be able to buy a house. I think it's very, very disheartening, especially if you work in one job or two jobs on the weekends and you're not able to get ahead. And those of us who bought houses 20, 30, 40 years ago, or even 10 years ago before the pandemic, are in a much different financial position,
maybe what the thing that, I was going to say maybe there could be not just an emeritus thing, but those who are totally compos mentis and making great contributions, if they reached an age limit, there could be a position for them to have some formal or informal role, not just advisor. I don't know what that might be, but again, it can't be. The part of the problem is there's always an exception which taints the discussion, which I understand.
You can't have
For
exceptions.
me, it was Ted Kennedy.
Yeah.
For that caller, it was Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
And she is totally right. Young people relate better to Bernie Sanders than virtually any politician in America these days. Who does he tour with? AOC, Ocasio-Cortez, one of the youngest politicians and one of the oldest elected politicians.
He's the youngest mayor ever.
Was he
of New
33?
York. I don't know how old he is, but he's the youngest mayor ever elected in New York City.
Dick in Rhode Island. Welcome to the show, Dick. Hi.
Hi. How are you doing?
We're well, thank you.
Listener, first-time caller.
We love those things. Thank you.
And I want to address the insanity of Trump, and it's what I call the subway syndrome. And I started that in my 80s days in New York. It's where everyone's riding on the subway car, and they're going about their business, and the crazy guy all of a sudden gets on the car, and everybody starts tapping their foot, and they're twiddling their thumbs, and they're looking at the floor. hoping he won't drool on them. Maybe he might flash them, and they're just not sure what to do, and they just hope they're going to get off at their next stop without getting harmed.
That is
you know
brilliant.
he's going to drool on you before you get off.
What'd you call it? New York subway syndrome? Is that what your name for it is?
I just call it the subway syndrome
That's
from
great.
my days in New York City.
Well, I lived there for 15 years, and I had the exact same experience, and you couldn't pick a better image for that. That was excellent, Dick. Call us again
And
soon.
that's our countries,
Yep.
our cities, our politicians, our corporations. They're all those riders on the car.
Thank you kindly.
You
that
know,
was great.
one of these stories is I've lost. It's not right in front of me, but talked about that if you look at companies, CEOs of companies, nobody's that old, with a couple of rare exceptions. They're mostly like in their 50s and stuff
Well,
like
what's
that.
this? Berkshire Hathaway just stepped down.
Yeah,
in his early 90s.
He's very
Yeah.
unusual, and that a lot of these Big Ten accounting firms, they make people retire at 60, or at least they did, and I think they did at least until a couple of years ago.
I think private sector, not just for self-serving reasons, is a whole different kettle of fish, don't you think?
Well, I think it's also that they think people are most effective at that. I mean, let's face it, you have a lot more energy when you're 45 than you do when you're 80. I think
I had no energy when I was 45 either, so I really can't relate to that concept. But I had energy once. I remember having energy. I do. It was great. It was a week. I was living in New York. I think I was 27.
Yeah,
it was
eating all
one of
those
the great
hot
weeks
dogs.
of my life.
Where'd you get the hot
Mom
dogs,
Dummy
Jim?
is 34.
34,
I was
thank
actually
you.
telling somebody that story last night.
Yeah.
I used when I was at University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. My roommates and I at midnight, under the influence, would drive to, not all of us, the driver would not.
Oh, yeah.
We'd drive to 43rd and
Right.
Broadway, get 2 hot dogs at Nathan's, and drive
Okay.
right back to Philadelphia.
Those were
What's your point?
Those were the energy days.
Those were the energy days. Didn't last long. The hot dog sort of dampened the energy thing. You know, you went to New York, you were flying high,
Yeah.
and then you came back.
Eat 4 or 5 hot dogs, you're not feeling so good.
It's not quite the same as it used to be.
Jennifer in Rhode Island, thank you for calling.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Love listening to your show.
Thank you very much.
I do believe that there ought to be not only age limits, but term limits.
So Oh, do I.
absolutely.
Congress
I didn't
To
use-
include senators.
Yeah.
And I think 75 is too old. I even would say 70 is a little bit too old. People don't have that energy. It ought to be similar to what you were just discussing as far as, business leaders. They step down at an earlier age. They can't keep up. I would actually, let me just finish.
Sure,
Jim.
of course.
I would actually say that one of the reasons why we're in this situation we are is we didn't have enough younger members coming in sooner. And because all of the older members are clogging up the positions. And I do like your idea as, have some type of an opportunity for them to step aside, but be able to provide some influence and mentorship, which they really should be doing while they're in office as well.
Jennifer, I said before that I agree with term limits. I spoke too soon. I am open to term limits. I didn't used to be. Marjorie and I used to debate about it. And the reason I am is because it's so clear that so many people have spent too long at the fair. However, the argument I always made, I want to get Jennifer's thought, and then you too, Marjorie, is the expertise.
Well,
you know what the problem is? If you don't have that expertise, you who writes all the bills?
But here's
Lobbyists
the problem.
write all the bills.
Look at what the reason is why Republicans whispering in the back rooms that they think Trump is off the rails and he's crazy. Why don't they do anything? Because he will primary them, like Bill Cassidy, senator from Louisiana. They are all worried about holding on to their jobs.
It's not just primary, Marjorie. Well, it's after they're done. They want to get a job lobbying government, and if they piss off Donald Trump,
that's it too. But I would say you might be able to. I'm not that worried about what somebody does when they leave the United States Senate.
Are you worried about losing
as
expertise or no?
No, I mean, as far as expertise goes, I think you can resolve some of that with staggered, elections.
That's a good point.
Right? And you also, as you mentioned before, I guess they do this with judges.
They do.
Where they can stay on and maybe get a stipend and just provide their expertise that way.
Good call, Jennifer. Thank you. By the way, we should have said earlier that while there's 70 is the cap on judges in Massachusetts, is the age cap.
Yeah, I think quite a few states have it. I'm not sure how many.
I
We're not
think
the
so,
only
too.
one. Oh, we have a little update here. Jack Smith, you may know that prosecuted Donald Trump regarding the January 6th effort to overthrow the election, basically.
Overthrow the government of the United States.
Yes, overthrow the government of the United States, and Trump's taking classified documents to Mar-a-Lago. He's on Capitol Hill today testifying, but our staff says the most interesting thing so far is the jockeying between Jim Jordan, he's the guy that never wears a jacket, and Jamie Raskin, because Jordan, according to reports, is pretty blatantly giving more time to Republicans, and Raskin is upset about it.
Can I be petty as petty as one
Sure.
can be? The only thing that this is so petty.
It's okay. I love it.
Fetterman wearing the sweat thing drives me
Sweatshirt,
out of
yeah.
my mind because it's purely for effect. I mean, and Jim Jordan, this tough guy who was credibly accused of knowing about the sex abuse scandal and the wrestling thing, and wherever he was, Ohio State or whatever it was, and obviously got away with that. This no jacket thing is so superficial.
What is the message?
So fun.
What is the message?
I'm a tough guy. I don't, I'm a person of the people kind of thing. He is just, and by the way, well, I think
most regular guys wear sports coats.
The Democrats yesterday in the committee told the Clintons in contempt for ignoring a subpoena. Do you know who also ignored a subpoena and was
Jim
never
Jordan.
held in contempt? Jim Jordan, the chair of the Judiciary Committee.
Yep.
Jonathan and Stoneham, you're next. Hi.
Hi, guys. I want to start by saying that I am a big fan of Bernie Sanders. I voted for him in all of the primaries that he was the presidential candidate. With that caveat in mind, I'm calling to say that my father worked for Draper Labs in Cambridge for 25, 30 years, and their policy for their CEO is you're allowed to be CEO for 10 years or until you're 65, whichever comes first.
Wow.
And then you're allowed to just step down. And I think that is a brilliant way to run a company like that because you keep fresh minds, especially the connection to MIT. So there's always a stream of young, fresh, smart people coming in. And me and my father have agreed for a long time that would be a great idea for the country. Maybe not 65, but 70 or 75. And the 10-year limit is great.
That is amazing. I didn't know that. Jonathan, thanks for sharing that.
You know, a texter just brought up something, and we should have thought of this. What do you think the effect of blocking stock trading would have on their wanting to hang in so long at the fair? And that's a great point because
they're about to do that, aren't
Chuck
they?
Todd and other people have talked about how, the stock market plummeted when Trump was talking about military attacks on Greenland.
That's one of the reasons I think he folded.
And then it flipped back up. How many people that were in the know do you think made money on the diminishment of the stock market and then its rise? I would say I'm suspicious.
Well, that's not an inside trading thing, though. I mean, think an average American probably
not
knew
an
the
average
same
American.
thing.
I think
this
people
is about
close.
Inside trading.
I think people close to Trump.
Oh, I see. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
would know about.
knew
this.
what his position was.
Yes,
I didn't understand.
and know he's
that.
going to change his position. Was an opportunity for them to make. Who knows how much money? Since this is kind of a grifter establishment there at in the White House now.
We just have an unscientific sample from the last half hour doing this, but what Chuck said is absolutely right. I looked it up a minute ago. The polling is roughly 80-20 on this.
Yeah.
But the problem, I'll end where I started, which is, we weren't going to discuss the constitutional limitations here. You would have to amend the Constitution, and to do it, you'd need the approval of Congress. And just like they'd never vote for term limits, she has that look on her face. Okay, go ahead. What are you going to say? This is going to be, no, you are not. No, you're not.
Several texters are concerned.
No, you're not reading that.
There should never be a timeless.
Oh my God.
One timeless thing that should never be retired is Harriet Heinemann jokes.
Can I tell you something? The retirement for you should be if you mention her one more time. That's what the cap should be.
We have her phone number. Do we have her phone number, Jim?
I don't know. 877. Well, actually, we're not giving out the phone number because we're done. I'm really sorry. Okay. We have a whole other minute we've got to kill.
Oh, no, we don't. We can say goodbye to the folks listening up on NEPM. And thank you very much, the folks who do listen on NEPM. We really appreciate it.
I mean, in all seriousness, you mentioned in the beginning, Chuck Grassley is, what is he, 91 years old? Maybe 92.
I know.
How ridiculous is... And what are the people of Iowa? I mean, maybe he's served them well in there, I assume.
Well, are you upset about the Maduro judge that's 92, whatever he is?
Well,
I'm a little concerned.
Yeah, Jeffrey Toobin wrote a piece in the New York Times. Saying the guy falls asleep in the middle of trials. Is that a problem? I guess not. They're boring, so why should he stay awake?
Well, he wakes him up when
if they say anything interesting.
Yeah, time for the morning break.
Exactly.
Have a cup of coffee.
Or for his nap.
Okay. By the way, I didn't mention that the Fabulous 413 is this afternoon at 3, and they are fabulous. They're really fun. The show continues here in Boston. Coming up after the new news on 89.7 is our food man, Corby Kummer. I didn't know Weight Watchers filed for bankruptcy. They may continue. Did you know they filed for bankruptcy, Jim?
Oh, I do now.
Okay. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be right back after the new news with the Beard Awards, too, for all the great restaurants in Boston and elsewhere.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Bryant University, ranked 5th in the nation for internships and recruiter demand by LinkedIn's 2025 Top Colleagues list. Committed to preparing students to be day one ready for success. Learn more at bryant.edu. America Reframed explores the complex issue of reparations in the U.S., focusing on historical injustices and systemic inequities to create a thoughtful dialogue. Watch The Cost of Inheritance tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Braude, head on Hour 2 of BPR. We'll start the noon hour with food policy analyst Corby Kummer and local restaurants and chefs that earned James Beard Award nominations. And in the age of GLP-1 medications, is counting calories a thing of the past?
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll speak with Massachusetts Secretary of Education Patrick Tutwiler on proposed graduation requirements for high school kids after voters ditched the MCAS and a continuing problem with absenteeism. Then we'll speak with the anti-ICE journalist who applied for a deportation officer job and got it. It's all ahead in the 12 o'clock hour at BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump has introduced his Board of Peace, initially proposed to keep the Israel-Hamas ceasefire in Gaza from collapsing. In Davos, Switzerland, site of the World Economic Forum, Trump says the effort will need international participation.
There's tremendous potential with the United Nations, and I think the combination of the Board of Peace with the kind of people we have here, coupled with the United Nations, can be something very, very unique for the world. It's for the world. This isn't United States. This is for the world.
However, many U.S. allies have not yet joined. The president's globally controversial quest to acquire Greenland overshadowed the inauguration of his Board of Peace. In his speech at Davos, Trump noted that U.S. brokered peace between Ukraine and Russia turned out to be more difficult than he anticipated. After meeting Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced his country, Russia, and the U.S. plan to hold trilateral talks starting Friday in the United Arab Emirates. White House envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, are now in Moscow for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Here's NPR's Charles Maines in Moscow.
Ahead of the meeting, Putin said he intended to discuss the possible use of Russian assets frozen in the West to help rebuild parts of Ukraine devastated by nearly 4 years of war. Putin's apparent offer comes amid weeks of intense Russian bombardment of Ukraine's energy infrastructure, including the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. The attacks have prompted charges Russia is weaponizing winter, with hundreds of thousands of people left without heat or power and sub-zero temperatures. Meanwhile, months of U.S. efforts to negotiate an end to the conflict have bogged down over Russian maximalist demands on Ukrainian territory, as well as Ukraine's desire for ironclad security guarantees from the West. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
It may get harder for employers to figure out what to do when a worker reports harassment. NPR's Andrea reports The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission voted 2-1 to rescind its harassment guidance.
The EEOC's harassment guidance was approved by the Commission during the Biden administration. It provided employers with the agency's reading of the law, explaining what kind of harassment constitutes illegal discrimination. The guidance included numerous examples of harassment based on protected characteristics, such as race, age, and religion, and also included examples of harassment of trans people. As a commissioner, EEOC Chair Andrea voted against the guidance, asserting that it's not harassment to acknowledge that biological sex is real. Now she's led the vote to rescind the 2024 guidance in its entirety. Dissenting Commissioner Kalpana Kotagal said the EEOC was throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
At last check on Wall Street, the Dow was up more than 400 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. After witnessing President Donald Trump's off-the-rails performance at the G8 summit in Davos, Switzerland yesterday, U.S. Senator Ed Markey has thrown the challenge flag and called for Trump's removal from office under the 25th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This is the one that allows for a chief executive's removal if he's unfit to perform the duties of his office. Markey, who's up for re-election this year and faces a competitive field of primary candidates, saw the writing on the wall right after Trump sent what can only be described as a bonkers letter to Norway's prime minister. In it, Trump said being denied the Nobel Peace Prize was enough for him to want to seize the Arctic territory. Yes, he did walk it back in Davos yesterday, but Markey was less than impressed, saying once again Trump creates an international crisis and then rides in on his hobby horse to fix it, adding Americans are tired of Trump's circus of chaos. All eyes and ears on Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey tonight as she delivers her annual State of the Commonwealth address. While we don't know everything the governor will talk about, we do know that the details she'll plan to provide Massachusetts residents some temporary relief on their utility bills this winter. Healey's address comes 2 days after she took the wraps off her run for re-election. The speech starts at 7 p.m. in the State House's chamber, and the GBH News will carry it live on 89.7 and on the GBH app. It's a very warm 41 degrees in Boston, but it'll be 14 soon enough. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. RWJF is a national philanthropy working toward a future where health is no longer a privilege, but a right. Learn more at rwjf.org.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be at the library tomorrow. We've got great live music. Press Play, Sue O'Connor's going to join us. Tuesday at the Boston Public Library, State Senator Diana DiZoglio is going to join us. She's going to present those questions that she wants to send to the Attorney General.
No, actually, it's the reverse. We're going to read the questions the Attorney General has posed to her.
Excuse me, I had it backwards.
And she's going to talk about whether she thinks it's appropriate to answer them.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Next Friday, the governor's going to be with us from 12 to 1, also at the library. And starting February 2nd, we are going to be 2 hours a day from 11 to 1. And Jim, GBH launches the Curiosity Desk show at 1 o'clock. Hi.
Hi to you, too. We're joined on Zoom by Corby Kummer, Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, Senior Editor at The Atlantic, and Senior Lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Hey, Corby.
Jim, hey, Marjorie.
Hi.
Hey, Corby. So tell us about the Jane Beard Foundation Awards and some semifinalists. This is a big deal to be a semifinalist. And who are the ones in Boston?
Well, it's a very big deal, and we've got some outstanding chef and bakers also. I have not been to Verven for the outstanding baker, Monica Glass. But
fabulous.
Yeah, we have. That's a lot of gluten-free stuff there,
We had
right?
her on, and we've been there. That she also, you know who owns that with her? Ken Oranger is her partner in that deal, and it's great.
That is terrific. And then Best Chef Northeast, Luke Fetbroth at Tonino down the street from our house in Jamaica Plain. Incredible. I mean, such a success story. He kind of came not exactly out of nowhere, but they opened Tonino and suddenly impossible to get into. And now Best Chef Northeast, fantastic. Chimay at Lenox Sophia, Boston. Amaryllis Colon, La Padrona, Boston. And then, I know a big favorite of yours, Sasha Coleman at Comfort Kitchen.
Yeah, they're great, and the nominees are great. But with the national things, it seems to me that Boston once again got short shrift. Did you? By the way, we should say you used to be on the group of people who pick these things, right?
Oh yeah. For decades actually.
And what is the process? How does this go?
The process is that there was a series of regional judges, great eaters from all over the Northeast who would be our informants, and they would send in nominations. And if they didn't, we would ask them for candidates. Then we would discuss them at the committee meetings, which were about 13 working restaurant critics from around the Northeast. They very much changed the rules since Me Too, really. Me Too is when they took a pause for an entire year. Now it's a very small committee that travels around the country and goes to all of the restaurants. So it's a completely different procedure from the way it used to be. But still, the idea is, Boston is not getting short shrift. Even in the days when I was right there fighting for Boston against the rest of New England, which we wanted to be New England represented in full, there were some years when there was like one or two Boston people who would appear in the various lists. New England is a big place. And it used to be that New England included Upper New York State and the eastern end of Long Island. I don't think it does anymore. I think those are in New York. So there's a lot. And also outstanding hospitality, Ostra in Boston, which if you can afford it is a lovely experience. And then there's outstanding restaurateur. I mean, some great favorites. Sorry to say they're in Maine, but boy, 4th Street restaurateur in Maine is just a fantastic.
Did you mention that Oya in Boston?
Yes, they're for outstanding restaurant.
I don't know anything about them.
Oh, yes, you do.
I do?
You do.
When he describes it, you will. Yes, you will.
Okay, tell us.
You remember Leather District, Sushi, couple Tim Cushman and his wife, who they opened a branch in New York for a while. They opened other branches like in Fenway. And it's just a fantastic sushi restaurant that makes people feel comfortable and welcome and kind of broke at the end. I shouldn't say that, but also very much worth the expense.
One other person worth mentioning, because there's a lot of talk. I know almost nothing about this. Maybe you do, and I'm going to mispronounce the name, so I apologize to him in advance. We're going to try to get him in here. For emerging chef, among other things, Pal Thampitak, I believe, and he is, it's a pop-up operation. I'm going to mispronounce this too. Gaeng, Gaeng, I assume Thai Supper Club. Do you know anything about that or not? People are raving about this.
That is fantastic that they are. It used to be that pop-ups and supper clubs, they existed for a long time, at least 20 years. They weren't eligible. So I'm really glad, because part of the whole idea of the traveling committee that goes everywhere around the country, and I mean, they sort of kill themselves. It's not an enviable job, even though it sounds like one, is that they're trying to be super inclusive. That was part of the whole year-long pause and rewriting the rules of how they work. So the idea that they are also trying to make room for people, first of all, who are rural, which was a huge effort in my time. We did a tremendous amount to get rural communities well represented. And the idea of a pop-up or a supper club. Yes, you can't get in all the time, but if they're extremely talented and the economic barriers are preventing a really talented chef from regularly opening a bricks and mortar restaurant, great that they're recognizing those people.
One last question. How much it costs to eat at these places really impact whether they win? I mean, is it only the high-end restaurants that get these nominations, or am I wrong?
Absolutely not.
Great.
No. There's also the America's Classic Awards, which I nominated and convinced the committee to give to Charlie's Sandwich Shop.
Oh my God.
We gave it to Durgan Park. So there would be Castle Beach we wanted, and I don't think it got it. I got Waterman's Beach in Maine, a lobster shack. But now, along with the new opportunity the committee is trying to include, certainly it has to do with much lower priced restaurants.
That's great.
High-end restaurants were never a big priority of the committee, but it was where newspapers wanted their critics to dine.
And by the way, let me just say, I said this a few weeks ago when the Bib Gourmand Awards came out from Michelin, in addition to that Omakase place that won the only one-star thing. I wasn't aware of what impact this had on restaurants. It is huge. I mean, I've spoken to, for example, Tracy Chang from Pagu, one of my favorites, was on yesterday with Jared. She's talked about some other people we've talked to. This has huge impact on their business, beard things and Michelin things. And so if they're restaurants you care about, this is it. The problem is getting in to some of these
I haven't
places.
been to Charlie's Sandwich Shop in years, but they used to have the best pancakes down there, blueberry pancakes, and you sit at the counter.
Best hash, too.
Great, yeah, it's a great neighborhood.
Remember how endangered they were, and then someone stepped in and bought them to keep them the same way except cleaner?
Yeah.
And so it's a kind of a miracle that they still exist.
Didn't Obama eat there? Isn't that one of the, I'm pretty sure Obama.
Oh, I'm sure.
In any case, we're talking to Corby Kummer. Corby, I have never heard of bitternut hickory.
Me neither.
Which means I never heard of bitternut hickory oil as a possible substitute for what all of us healthy people are eating these days. Olive oil. What is this?
I so love this story that the Boston Globe did about.
That's great.
It's the idea of foraged foods all around you, and I don't know if Franklin Park ever did a tour of here are the edible crops right around you in the park, and here's how you identify them, here's what you don't want to eat, but here are lots of so-called weeds that you can have. These are the butternut hickory trees, of which there are millions in New England, hundreds of thousands along the roads. They're apparently indestructible and called bomb-proof by botanists because there's so many of them. And so the nuts that we probably view as nuisances on hikes instead can be pressed into a wonderful buttery tasting oil. Now, one of the things that was sort of buried in this wonderful story about this resource all around us is that there are pressing methods that take out some of the bitter tannins to make it this authentically sweet and buttery experience. The problem is all of these hundreds of thousands of millions of trees are dispersed, so there hasn't been an efficient way to harvest them, press them, and sell them. It's very hard to get this oil. I've never had it. I'm dying to go to a tasting right now and try it. But now there are farmers who are planting crops. Apparently, it's this bomb-proof tree. I don't know how long it takes to bear nuts that can be pressed into oil. But what's completely delightful about this is you don't have to import another crop. You can use what's been around you for centuries and turn it into a product. Apparently, Native Americans knew about it and used it and pressed it. And it's time that we learned too.
Okay, Corby Kummer. So I love this story about the wine moms. We talked about this a while back. Michelle Goldberg wrote a piece about it for the New York Times as well. This guy on Fox was talking about how this organized gang of wine moms are running around at these anti-ICE demonstrations using Antifa tactics to harass and impede. And they're not only drinking wine, they're self-important white women. They're very smug. So this is a whole thing, just not about class warfare. Supposedly these liberal women running around because they got nothing else to do but they go to yoga class or something. And this thing about wine versus beer, which I guess has a long history in the class warfare deal.
Oh, sure it does. I mean, wine wasn't the tradition here. Thomas Jefferson was a great œnophile, or however you pronounce that, and wine collector and importer. But it's always been a snobbish pursuit. There's a great book called The Wine Lover's Daughter by Anne Fadiman, who teaches at Yale but lives in Western Mass. And she's much revered among writers. And it was about her radio star father, Clifton Fadiman, who was an incredible wine snob. And he had a fabulous world-class wine collection just so he could deny his Brooklyn Jewish origins. And so the idea was this was a signifier of upper, in those days, WASPs were the class to aspire to if you were a middle class, lower class, educated Jew. So, and she wrote She's a so-called super taster, which I am too, which means it's not so great. You're oversensitive to sensory stimuli. So she hates wine. But it's been used in class wars as a signifier to say, you are pretentious. You can afford drinks that others can't, who are just regular guy beer drinkers. But what fascinates me about this is that the right will seize on any signifier they can vilify. So now they're talking about wine moms, Antifa tactic with ICE, but it's Maha moms who maybe got Trump elected. They had better watch out against, these disparaging remarks against mothers.
Yeah, I just also don't recall seeing many protesters in the recent weeks with their cell phone in one hand and a wine glass in the other. I've missed that on the streets of Minnesota.
No, but it's an easy symbolic.
It is, but it's just baloney. Is what I'm saying. I've not seen much of that. Maybe I've missed it. I don't know. Have you seen many wine swilling protesters?
Is what you're saying that some of the anti-liberal disparagement we've seen sort of gets under your skin, and you say, I don't want them naming that and shaming me and recognizing it, whereas the wine moms just seems bonkers.
Yeah.
There are wine moms going around. It's people of all kinds defending themselves against ICE.
Especially it's freezing out there. They're out there. It wasn't going to be like 40 degrees below zero or something like that over the weekend.
I don't think they meant when they're protesting they have a bottle of Chardonnay in their back pocket.
Then how do they know they're wine moms? Are they spying on them in the windows?
I don't think they know anything.
Well, that's it. They're making it up. That's
my shocking point. That they're making it up in this era, isn't it?
It's shocking.
Okay, well, we have a couple of
immigrants eating pets.
That's right. They're having a nice
point.
Chardonnay after they eat the cat.
Corby, there's a story about these huge poultry farms that are led by Trump sycophants who are upset because this temporary protected status is being removed for people from many countries out of cruelty, by the way, not out of good policy, because they'd be forced to return to countries that would be very dangerous for them. And finally, some of them are quietly speaking up, if that's not oxymoronic, to the Trump people, because they're destroying the ending of temporary protected status is eliminating a significant percentage of their workforce, which relates to what we've been saying for years. I'm always amazed that big businesses that are so reliant on undocumented workers have been so silent in these debates. Are we about to see, finally, are we reaching a tipping point for a lot of these Trump-supporting CEOs, or is this aberrational?
Because every time we've seen potential tipping points, for example, the cattlemen's lobby and another very large lobby that had been big Trump donors were protesting ICE raids on meat processing plants and also restaurants and hospitality. And do you remember when Trump said, I have a lot of fine people, a lot of friends in the hospitality industry, and we're going to make sure that they can keep their employees and they can stay in business because we don't want to hurt their bottom lines. But then ICE didn't do anything about it. It was just a claim that he and the administration walked back soon. So we've been waiting and waiting because in this case, it's an enormous, powerful poultry manufacturer in Delaware. Delmarva for Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia is the country's largest poultry processing capital and center, millions and millions of birds. And apparently this guy from Montrose, is it called?
Yeah.
No, Montaire gave $75 million to Republican causes, including a lot of it to Trump. And he was saying, we're losing thousands of employees and our prices are going to go up and we're not going to be able to stay in business. But so far, they have not gotten relief. So I don't think we're approaching a tipping point. But it is extraordinary that the farmers who helped elect Trump, and especially, all over California, are facing inability to harvest crops, and in this case, inability to process chickens and keep their businesses going because of the ICE deportations of hundreds of thousands of Haitian and then Somali immigrants, both groups of which are prominent in poultry industry.
Well, in fairness to Trump, though, we have to be fair. He has said to these farmers they can raise their chickens in Greenland. So that'll take care of that. Corby, it's great to see you as always.
And you.
Be well.
We've been speaking with Corby Kummer, Executive Director of the Food and Society
Almost
Policy
everything
Program.
he does is antithetical to even his own political interests. It's really incredible.
It is incredible. It's like we're living in some, I don't know what. Okay,
we
Corby,
are, whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is. He is Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a Senior Editor at The Atlantic, Senior Lecturer at Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy. Corby, thank you very much. Coming up after this quick break, we are going to talk to Patrick Tutwiler.
Easy for you to say.
I know, I goofed that up, I apologize. He is the Massachusetts Education Secretary. We're going to talk to him about what happens now that we have no more MCAS as a graduation requirement, and this continuing problem with absenteeism in schools. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Wake up, turn on the radio, it's Groundhog Day, again and again and again.
Do you ever have deja vu, Mrs. Lancaster?
I don't think so, but I could check with the kitchen.
Our Wednesday watch party revisits the classic that made February 2nd cinematic shorthand for being stuck and figuring out how to get unstuck. Bill Murray, Punxsutawney Phil, and one stubborn alarm clock. Cue it up, watch along, and call in to tell us why this movie never gets old.
I've seen it over 100 times.
That's on The Culture Show next Wednesday at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Brightbound. It's never too early to start thinking about what comes next, and Brightbound helps students from middle school through high school discover rewarding careers. Learn more at BRITEbound.org. And Bonsai Bar, hosting pop-up beginner bonsai workshops at breweries across New England. Hands-on classes provide guidance in the basics of bonsai design and care in a group setting. More at bonsaibar.com.
Welcome back to VPR. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow on Tuesday. State Auditor Diana DeZoglio is going to join us to respond to what the Attorney General said to us the other day. And next Friday, the boss of our next guest, who better be careful, is the governor is going to be with us from noon to 1. Speaking of that appointee of the governor nominee, we're joined now in Studio 3 by Massachusetts Education Secretary Patrick Tutwiler as the state proposes new graduation requirements post-MCAS as a graduation requirement repeal. Secretary, it's great to see you.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me back on this important day.
Now, Secretary, you may have heard...
Wait, you should explain why it's an important day.
Well, it's the State of the Commonwealth.
That is correct.
This evening, 7 p.m., which you all will carry live. And
yes, we will.
We will?
I don't know.
Well, I heard that on the way here. I'm sorry.
Did?
So, yeah.
Well, it's good that somebody knows what we're doing.
You're ahead of us.
Exactly. We knew that. That was just a test to see how you do.
That's right.
Right.
So, Secretary, you may have heard about the President of the United States. He likes to get awards and prizes from people. And when we had to vote on the MCAS, you and I, we voted for the students. Jim voted because he was hoping to get another award for the Massachusetts Teachers Association.
I haven't yet, but I assume I will. So
he's waiting. Hasn't come
What's
yet.
your point, Marjorie?
But my point is, where are we now, and what's going to replace the MCAS as graduation requirement? What are we going to do?
Yeah, indeed. Thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
And first, I will lift up that Governor Healy and myself see this, the outcome of the question 2, as an opportunity, right? We landed in a place where we no longer had a tie that bound all districts together with the MCAS, and landed us in a place with really nothing, right, in terms of graduation requirements, uniform. And so we see this as an opportunity to answer really important questions about what it means to graduate from high school in Massachusetts. And so Governor Healy signed an executive order establishing a 32-member council whose task it was to answer that question. We have been engaging in the work since last March with that council and have done 2 important things. One, we have released a vision of a Massachusetts graduate, which articulates very clearly what we want all students to know and be able to do when they graduate from high school. This is comprised of 3 core qualities: thinkers, leaders, and contributors. contributors and supported by 6 core competencies. And then on December 1st, we had the great privilege of traveling to Dedham High School to release the interim report, which articulates in more sort of defined fashion where we are with this work. I'm happy to lean into the details of that, but we are in the thick of it and feeling pretty good about where we are thus far. Final report's due in June.
But what happens to the kids that are seniors this year?
So the kids who are seniors this year are still under
the MCAS.
No.
Oh,
actually.
no.
Well, everybody
okay.
still has to take
the
it.
MCAS.
That is a federal requirement. But there is a coursework requirement now that aligns with the content areas in the MCAS. So there's got to pass science. You've got to pass 2 high school English classes. Then you have to pass an algebra and a geometry course. That's it. And so we think that there can be a more robust requirement for students, and this interim report really outlines.
Give us a brief summary of what the alternative is.
What the alternative is.
What the alternative to MCAS is, the graduation requirement. What would the substitute be that you guys have proposed?
I really appreciate you asking that.
I knew you would, yes.
So we've articulated in this interim report a robust strategy that really has 3 buckets. The first we call the foundation of learning, which is an articulation of a coursework sequence that every student must engage in over the course. State mandated, right? You must take these courses. It's aligned with something that came out back in 2007 called Mass Core, 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 3 years of science, so forth and so on. But it is a coursework sequence that is anchored in research and evidence that supports this idea that when students take it, they graduate from high school at high rates, they matriculate to college at high rates, and importantly, they persist in college at higher rates than those who do not. So there's a foundation of learning, a course sequence requirement. There is also a bucket where we have to sort of understand, how do we know that students are meeting the high standards that we've laid out for them? How do we know how they're progressing with these courses? We've proposed a hybrid assessment strategy that involves a few thoughtfully chosen end-of-course assessments. So instead of the MCAS, which is taken in 10th grade, which encompasses 2 math disciplines, as well as 2 years of English, we're going to choose specific classes, much like a final exam, where there will be a state-designed, state-administered, and state-assessed assessment. Students are not required to pass it in order to graduate, but we do need to find a way to make those assessments meaningful, and that's the work that's still ongoing. And then finally, really quickly, as part of that hybrid assessment model, there is what we call a portfolio or a capstone assessment. Every student will be required to do one of those. These are the assessments that allow us to get at those sort of durable skills, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, that a state assessment will not.
When you say those end-of-course tests are not going to, and obviously that's the contentious part of this recommendation, because some people think it violates at least the spirit of the ballot question. You said that wouldn't bar graduation, but they'd be factored into the grade. Is that not correct?
We have not articulated how we want to make these meaningful just yet. Some have taken the leap to say this is how it's going to be meaningful. It's going to be part of the grade. It could, but this is the piece of the work that we're going to define.
But if it's not a requirement, Secretary, then why replace MCAS as not a requirement? As you say, MCAS is still taken.
Yep.
The results come out. We'll talk about that in a minute. And if it's not a requirement, why replace it with another test that's not a requirement?
Great question. And so we think that end-of-course assessments allow us to understand in more targeted fashion where students are on standards better than the MCAS does currently. We actually envision the end-of-course assessments in high school replacing the MCAS. This is all about student learning, understanding where they are so we can support them going forward.
Okay, one last question about this. We say, you can't say this, you may not even believe it, we call the legislature the place where good ideas go to die. Now let's assume...
I did not say that.
I know you did. And let's assume, I mean, I did vote in favor of eliminating MCAS as graduation requirements, so tests do make me nervous, but let's assume it's as good an idea as you currently believe it to be. What are the odds, would you say, the legislature has the courage to mandate anything in this area to cities and towns? Because they're very reluctant, as you well know, probably as well as anybody, to mandate anything on the education or any other front to cities and towns.
Well, I think the ball is in our court to make a compelling case through all of the research, through the broad-based input that we've gathered on the recommendations thus far. It's our responsibility to make the case for why this is good for kids, why this is, first and foremost, why this is good for the higher education community, why this is good for employers. And I think we've done that so far with the interim report.
By the way, before we continue, Marjorie attempted to embarrass me by saying the reason I had that position is because many years ago I got the President's Award from the MTA, and anonymous mass teachers. Anonymous texter says, Marjorie is getting the FIFA Teachers Union Award this year as well.
Right.
So there you go.
It will not impact my feelings.
You can join Donald Trump.
That's right. I can join Donald Trump. So you've talked about cell phone bans in schools, and more states have banned cell phones. This is something else that's up with the legislature that has not gotten through yet.
Senate did 38-2.
Yes, but it's not gotten through the House yet, so it's not a law. Give us your case on why it should be a law.
Well, first I'll say we'll wait until the what's proposed reaches the governor's desk before we opine. But what I'll say at the highest level is we are deeply concerned about student outcomes, student mental health, and we know from an evidence and research standpoint that cell phones create challenges during the school day. They can be a distraction. Unfortunately, sometimes they're used to do things that do not meet our behavior expectations in schools. And so I'll just say from what I've seen, traveling to schools that have engaged in cell phone bans, Brockton High School being one of them, there's been a transformation at that school in terms of what it feels like to be there during the day. Students are interacting with each other. If you're there during mealtime, they're talking to each other rather than looking down at a device. And certainly, teachers are not having to engage in those power struggles every day with students around, put it down, put it away. And so they're able to more substantively, in addition to the mental health supports and the lack of distraction, lean into the reason why they're there, which is to learn.
So obviously, individual schools can make these rules before the legislature acts.
They can and they have in increasing numbers.
I have to say, the only argument, we've done this topic for years, long before the Attorney General made this, bell-to-bell proposal thing. And the only argument we ever hear is a parent calls and says, I got to be able to be in touch with my kid. And while we're somewhat sympathetic, our response always is the last time a kid should be talking to their parent instead of paying attention to the person who's their leader in the classroom is when there's a crisis. Is there any other argument against doing this that you find that you hear, or is that the whole thing that a parent is upset?
Well, let's just say that there's no argument that
you
is
find
compelling
persuasive.
to
Fine.
me. Yeah.
Okay, so the answer to that was no. There are no other arguments. We're talking to the Secretary of Education in Massachusetts.
We always hear Massachusetts #1 schools in the nation, and Jim and I debate this because my theory is that, there's a bunch of high-tech geniuses living in places like Lexington and Wellesley, and then there's the schools that are not full of the high-tech geniuses and more struggling communities like a Holyoke or a Brockton that you just mentioned, and that those genius kids pull up the numbers. But I was distressed to read about places like Mississippi passing us in reading scores among the younger kids. That was really upsetting. So I guess even the Lexington geniuses couldn't pass their reading tests or what?
Well, first I would say, and you're not, to be clear, I don't think you're saying this. I believe in the potential of every student, right? Every student can achieve on a high level so long as they have the right supports and are given the opportunities. And so I would say that I have been impressed and read with interest what's happened in Mississippi. I want to name first that was over a 10-year period of time.
Poorest state in the nation, too.
Poorest state in the nation. But what did they do? What's the ingredient? What's the recipe for their success? They aligned themselves with what the research has long said about how you teach reading, right? And provided coaching and supports, high quality instructional materials for their teachers. And so that is a playbook that can be applied anywhere. And in fact, under Governor Healey's leadership, we've been doing that over the past 3 years. I think with great success, and I can talk about that more deeply, but I just want to name that while we lift up and celebrate the success of any young people anywhere, Mississippi has not yet taken Massachusetts over. They're doing great, but they're we're still.
But our MCAS scores, are they even at the level of pre-pandemic? They're not. So why isn't there much more movement in a positive direction now that at least the actual moment of the pandemic is behind us?
Well, I appreciate that perspective, and we are 4 or 5 years beyond the pandemic, and I know that our lives have returned to quote-unquote normal in many ways, but I would say when we're talking about teaching children, we're talking about human beings, I think we have to wrap our arms around the idea that change and progress will be a process, not an event, right? Which is why I would lift up that no state in the United States, with the exception of Mississippi and Alabama, is back to pre-pandemic levels of performance when we look at the National Assessment for Education Progress. So it takes time. And while we're not back to 2019 performance, we are incrementally moving in the right direction, which I think is important. Can we go faster? I think with some of the things that Governor Healey's put in place, we'll begin to see those returns.
You know, we talked to you last time you were here about this absenteeism problem, which is a big deal. Yeah. The Globe had a piece, I don't know what you thought of it, talking about ways to deal with absenteeism, paying kids for attendance, focusing on the neediest kids. Tell kids they got to go to sleep because you're going to disable the devices when they take home from school, so they can't stay up on that. I mean, what's the problem, and what do you think could help?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that absenteeism is a complex phenomenon. Yeah. There are lots of factors involved. Sometimes it's a food security issue. Sometimes it's a housing stability
500
issue.
500 kids in Lawrence, I read, are homeless?
Yeah. Well, when I was superintendent in Lynn, we had 1,100 students who were homeless.
That's tough.
So, yeah, and, these are factors that, impact one's ability to
also, you didn't include ICE. We have people calling the show that said they're hesitant to send their kid to school. So, but go ahead. How bad is the situation right now?
It's improving, right? So last year we were at about 19% of students chronically absent. That means
10 or more.
19% of students missing 10% of the school year. Wow. But that is down, right, from the previous year. And if you go back 2 or 3 years, it was, about 10% more than that. So we're moving in the right direction. It's just slow. But as I said, change in education is a process, not an event. And it's not just a Massachusetts thing. This is a national phenomenon.
So what do you think it's about, though? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't used to be so bad pre-pandemic. 10 years or 20 years ago. Yeah. So what's the underlying reason? Yeah. You mentioned homelessness and food insecurity, but what other things? And those are big, obviously.
Well, it's all of those things. And if you go back to 2019, our chronic absenteeism rate was around 12 or 13%. So we're not there yet. Yeah. But I'd say it's issues around mental health. Yeah. I will also say, particularly at the high school level, there's engagement issues, the value proposition of going, which is why we've been working hard to reimagine high school under Governor Healey's leadership. And so the strategy has been to lean in pretty heavily to what we call the hierarchy of need. Let's make sure the kids are being fed. We're now a universally free breakfast and lunch state, which happened under Governor Healey's leadership. We've been working hard on developing a mental health strategy, a framework that supports mental health wellness from birth through higher education. No other state in the country has that. We're working on that right now. And so all of these things that we know impact absenteeism, we are working on. I would just say there's not going to be a year where you see a 10% drop in chronic absenteeism. It's going to be an incremental improvement.
Yeah, here's a good question from Rich in Scituate. He just texted it in. Question for the Secretary. Do you consider the need for students to leave high school with what I will call good citizen skills? That would include household finance, civics, media literacy, two clenched fists in the air from if you're not watching on YouTube. Do you agree that these are extremely important these days, Secretary?
Who wrote that?
Rich in Scituate.
Rich, I'm reaching out to you and giving you a hug, an air hug online right now. I absolutely believe those things are important. And the last bucket that I didn't get to with the interim report on graduation requirements actually touches a lot of those things that he just lifted up. In developing this interim report, we did a lot of listening, right? We did a listening tour. We did a survey, about 7,000 respondents. Financial literacy was the most talked about content area that people wanted to see live in a graduation requirement. So the final bucket, we call it Prepared for What's Next. This is the college, career, and civic readiness piece. Financial literacy is part of that. This whole idea of helping students develop a plan for when they leave high school, whether it's higher ed or something else. We need them thinking about that when they set foot in high school, and there's a program called My Career and Academic Plan that can deliver on that. We also want every student completing the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, because we know that that increases the likelihood that they'll matriculate to college. And so, yes, Rich, these are things that are important, and these are things that are baked into that.
Civics is not part of the deal, though, the last couple of years. Is it not already?
Back in 2016, 2017, by law, students need to engage in a civics project, both in middle school and again in high school. I've been to the events where students demonstrate their projects. They are incredible. This is their opportunity to really understand what civics is and then the role that they play in society and lifting it up.
So, Secretary, we only have 2 minutes left. Enough about you. Let's talk about me for a minute.
Let's do it.
So,
Let's do it.
we
look
learned
good, by the way.
from one of your people, or
you just glossed right over that.
I did not. But
we all say that. Secretary.
We learned that I wrote a piece for the Globe the other day, which began talking about volunteerism, actually, but not volunteerism, service, mandatory service, and I started with a mention of this incredible program that Carolyn Casey and Deval Patrick started called Project 351. You were one of their heroes last year, right? These are these 8th grade ambassadors from 351 cities and towns that engage in service. Their launch was last Saturday for Martin Luther King weekend. How do you feel? I know you're a supporter of service. How do you feel about mandatory service? We talked to Doris Kearns Goodwin and her kid about it yesterday. How do you feel about it?
Well, first, I just need to do this because I know she listens. Carolyn Casey is a fellow Holy Cross grad, so I just want to shout her out.
So are all the Caseys, by the way, and her family,
yes,
by the way.
That's true.
Yeah.
I met her brother. You're absolutely right.
It's gorgeous now these days. It's beautiful.
Right on. So incredible leader and doing incredible work with Governor Patrick's vision around this. When you look at what the outcomes from this experience for the students who participate, they are so far-reaching and so transformational for those individuals. I will say, philosophically, I am a big believer in service because of the educational outcomes. It is not yet a piece of our sort of interim report and our proposal. Doesn't mean that it can't be. So more to come on
let's talk. Yes? No, I'm serious. It could be.
We're not done yet.
Well, before you leave, we don't have time for this now. When one of the people who I interviewed for the piece, who obviously knows a lot about service, the co-founder of City Year, he wasn't into the concept I was advancing, which was 18 to 22 years, a year to a year and a half. Yeah. He believes the final semester of your senior year, when most people aren't doing anything except waiting to get out of school.
Partying. You don't
can't
want to ruin
admit that. There should be mandatory service then. Is that something you'd entertain?
Well, here's what I would say. When students...
Zalon Casey, by the way, if I didn't say his name.
First semester, Jim. It should be first semester.
In the Capstone project, which is a part of the proposal with the hybrid assessment, having 2 children that did capstone projects their senior year, second semester, there's a volunteerism element of that I think we should spotlight. It is a learning experience, and students are choosing something they want to dive deep into. But often there's a volunteerism piece to that. Maybe there's a way for us to weave that in more substantively.
Fabulous. Good to see you. Take care.
Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it.
My
We've been
pleasure.
speaking with Massachusetts Education Secretary Patrick Tutwiler. We very much appreciate your time, Secretary. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to talk to a freelance journalist who applied for a job at Immigration and Customs Enforcement to prove a point about how they recruit people. Turns out she was offered the job despite an awful lot of overlooking with minimal pre-screening. That's next. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Tonight, Governor Maura Healey delivers her State of the Commonwealth address. The speech comes days after officially kicking off her 2026 re-election campaign and at a time when Massachusetts faces affordability challenges, budget pressures, and federal funding cuts. I'm Tori Bedford. Join me for full coverage of the 2026 State of the Commonwealth. Tonight at 7 on GBH 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News app.
Support for our programs comes from you.
and McLean Middleton. For over 100 years, McLean Middleton has been dedicated to serving its clients and its community, offering guidance through the complexities of today's legal system. With locations in Woburn and Boston, McLean.com.
And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering short courses on critical topics led by world-class faculty. Professionals can get up to speed on AI, innovation, cybersecurity, and operational strategy. More at executive.mit.edu.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow and Tuesday at the library. The auditor, Diana DiZoglio, joins us to respond to some things the Attorney General told us last week. And Friday of next week, yes, the governor joins us for an hour of Ask the Governor. Maura Healey is with us, noon to 1. Our next guest is a freelance journalist and military veteran who's reported on the harms of ICE behavior. For her latest story, she went to see what the ICE officer recruitment process was like. You probably read officials are planning to spend $100 million over the year on what they're calling, quote, wartime recruitment to hire gun rights supporters and military enthusiasts through online influencers and targeted advertising campaigns. So Laura Jedeed, who I was just talking about, applied, and then the incredible story begins. Laura, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much, and congratulations. I enjoyed every single word of the story.
So
I got a real kick out of it. So tell people, why did you apply to ICE?
Well, this story was not supposed to be what it turned into. I just wanted to write an article about the ICE hiring event in August down in Arlington, Texas. And I figured rather than, a lot of people wrote the article that needed to be written, which was, stand outside, you interview the people who are going in, you ask ICE declines to comment, and I decided I would do something a little different. I would apply myself and see what it was like. I'm a veteran. I've deployed to Afghanistan. My resume at first glance looks pretty good. I figured it would be enough to get me through the door. And then eventually they would look me up or put me in any computer and realize that I'm a pretty outspoken critic of ICE and the Trump administration, and that a lot of my work has been less than flattering. And then that would be the end of it. So I went, I submitted my resume, I had a very brief interview, and they told me to wait for an offer, which I just assumed I'd never get.
So tell us about that interview. What was that whole thing in Austin like? The interview, the after, tell us about that whole day.
Yeah, so we all had to pick time slots on Eventbrite, the official platform of the government, I suppose. And usually when people ask you to pick a time slot, it usually means that they're expecting to get mobbed. They don't want everyone to come all at once. Well, I picked 9 a.m., which I thought would probably be a decent time. And maybe every other hour of the day was mobbed. All I can tell you is that when I went, there were no lines to get in and barely a line to get interviewed, and probably no more than 150 people there at any moment. This venue, the Arlington Esports Arena, seats thousands, for context. I waited briefly, got up to my interview, which was a very normal-seeming person just across from a folding table. She asked me some very basic questions, name, date of birth, where had I served, how long had I been out, where did I want to sit stationed, all this stuff that I really could have been a form. I assumed it was a pre-interview, and then it finished, and she was like, okay, looks good. Sit tight, and we'll get you a tentative offer as soon as we can. It'll come via email. Might come today, but we're prioritizing law enforcement experience, so it might be a couple days. And that was the end of the process. We had an option to talk with an ICE agent to see what the job would be like, not part of the interview. And I did do that, but that was it.
What was your expectation coming out of that about what was going to happen, if anything?
I mean, I figured that was it. I figured my hope was that they wouldn't be angry. I thought if they, caught on while I was there, things might get a bit odd. But I figured, when I'm out of sight, they'd figure it out. They wouldn't be that mad. I just wouldn't hear from them, and then I would write my small article about this event that would not have really made very many waves at all, which is not what happened.
So we can assume they did not Google you, because your stories would have shown up that you'd written or looked at your social media.
There also aren't many Laura Jedeeds.
No, that's right.
There's one. There's
one.
exactly
It's not like you're Susan Smith or anything like that. The other thing is, didn't you mention that you smoked some weed and they didn't ask about that, or what was the deal there?
Well, that was so. Just really quickly, I got the tentative offer a week later. I didn't see it because I wasn't looking for it. They said it would be a couple days at most, and I just didn't think I would get one at all. So I missed the tentative offer, didn't fill out any of the paperwork they filled out. And yet, 3 weeks later, I received an email that I did see, which was, thank you for your interest in the ICE process. As your next step in this hiring process, please take a drug test. Well, cannabis is legal in New York. I'd smoked some about 6 days before that test, but why not, right? I went ahead and I took the test anyway, expecting to fail.
And did you hear whether they knew if you failed or not failed? Nothing.
Well, that's what prompted me to finally check the hiring portal, which I suppose I should have been doing all along. Because when you fail a drug test, they are supposed to call you, or at least that's my understanding. So when I didn't get the call, I was like, well, is it possible that I passed? I mean, miracles happen. I'll log in and find out, I guess. So I logged in. And what I found was that the drug test results hadn't come back in at that point. But what I did see was that it listed me as having received a final offer, as having accepted the final offer, and of having an EOD date, an entry on duty date of September 30th, 2025, which was 3 days before I had checked.
Can we go back for? Can we go back for? I mean, it's we're laughing, but it really isn't funny. Obviously, can we go back for a second? You glossed over. You didn't submit any of the paperwork. Some of the paperwork, based on your piece, is pretty relevant and important if you're going to have this kind of law enforcement responsibility. Explain to people what they were theoretically looking for.
Yes, and it is. I think it's pretty funny that they almost hired a journalist who's very openly does not like them. But what's not funny is that, for example, I didn't fill out the paperwork that certified that I'd never been convicted of a felony involving domestic violence. I didn't send that in. If they didn't check that, they don't know. I didn't send in medical paperwork. I didn't send in my background check paperwork. And my background check was listed as having been completed on October 6th. I checked on October 3rd, so it had already been completed in the future, which I don't believe, first of all, because of temporality, but also because in addition to my dislike of the Trump administration, my very vocal criticism of it, my father is from Syria. The Jedeed is a Syrian name. He immigrated in the 70s. When I got my security clearance in the military, I got it several months after my peers because they had to check all that. Yeah. And the fact that they had no questions about that makes me think they really didn't check at all.
Was this at the time that the $50,000 offer for sign up was there? And
yes,
you would think that would entice more than a few people to show up at 9 o'clock, because that's a lot of money. Did they tell you, when they gave you an offer, did they talk at all about training at any point in this interview process or in the paperwork?
Not in the interview process. The paperwork had a bit of a handbook that outlined some of the physical requirements and stuff like that. And while I was at the hiring event, at one point a senior agent came on stage to answer some questions from the crowd, and almost every single question from the crowd had to do with training. They seemed especially concerned about whether they'd have to get tased to be certified on tasers, get pepper sprayed to be certified to use pepper guns. They were assured that if they'd been through law enforcement, maybe they'd have to go through it again, but we were all promised brand new pepper ball guns that we could use specifically on protesters in liberal cities. That was explicit.
Laura,
in liberal cities.
Yeah.
Yes.
Laura, we're talking to Laura Jedeed, who wrote your original piece. We should have said, was this in Slate? Where did you write the original?
It was Slate magazine.
It's really, and while we're thrilled to talk to Laura, you should read the whole piece. It is really amazing. I was thinking of you last night after I read what the government response to your piece was. You'll share that in a minute. It came the same day that when some reporter tweeted Carolyn Levitt to say the president just mentioned Iceland 4 times. It's Greenland, isn't it? And her response was, no, he didn't, essentially. That's the government's response to you. You got a job offer. In the thing you wrote, you showed the image, the screen grab of the offer, and their position is, no, you didn't, right?
Yeah, and that seems to be the default position of the Trump administration. I think people sometimes think of their lies as a sign of weakness, and in some ways it is. But the fact is, I think they believe they can speak reality into being, and the more egregious the lies they tell and get away with, the more powerful they must be. In their universe, the strongest person gets to decide what the truth is, and we saw that, in the small example of my article where they looked at, there was a video of my screen, and their response wasn't, we'll look into it, or this isn't what you think it is, or this looks this way but is this way. It was, no, it didn't happen. We saw the same thing with Renee Good's shooting, where we saw from multiple angles that Good was attempting to swerve away from the driver, and that he was not he was not hit, and yet they say that he was sent to the hospital and had internal bleeding, despite the evidence of our lying eyes. Trump says Iceland 4 times. No, he didn't. They really believe they can speak reality into being, I think.
Laura Jedeed, I know this is obvious if people have listened to or read your story, but so for those to whom it's not that obvious, what are the takeaways from your experience in terms of who were applying for and getting these jobs?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is that unless this was a fluke that involved only my application, which I find very unlikely given that this was a mass hiring event, not only do we not know who the people behind those masks in our cities terrorizing, brutalizing, now murdering people, we don't know who they are, but it's possible ICE doesn't know who they are, and it seems they don't care who they are. This is not normal. This is not the sign of a healthy organization that's making some mistakes or has bad leadership or with a few bad apples. This, to me, is a sign of a really profoundly deep dysfunction and apathy for the safety of American people, ranging from the ICE officers themselves, which I don't personally care much about. But if I did care, I would be concerned about people unvetted, being deployed in the field next to other ICE officers, but more importantly, the American people who are being subjected to this horrible violence. This is not normal. This is an emergency.
By the way, the rumor I've heard is you're next applying to be Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services. Is that true, or is that Laura Jedeed?
Well, I've made all my Botox appointments, so we'll see if those go through.
Your piece was fabulous and really eye-opening. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Yeah, thank you for a great piece of journalism, Laura. It really was stunning and shocking. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Yep.
Spell her last name, too, Margie, if you would, so
Jedeed.
People can check her out.
Jedeed. Laura, Laura. Laura Jedeed. The piece originally ran in Slate.
It's great.
She applied to ICE, as we said, and we just heard about what happened. Her website is laurajedeed.com. Again, Jedeed. laurajedeed.com. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to be speaking to the Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary, Andrea Cabral. She zooms in to talk about men and women that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. We're going to talk about ICE as well, more pardons by Trump, and a little bit, we're going to talk about Jack Smith. I think we're going to update on Jack Smith.
We are. Yeah.
You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you're a GBH sustainer and your credit or debit card has expired, it's time to update your information. Take just a few minutes to make sure your information is current. Go to gbh.com/update, and thank you for your support.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Speakeasy Stage, presenting Job, the relentless psychological thriller for the digital age. Now playing through February 7th at Speakeasy Stage. SpeakeasyStage.com. And the Cambridge Homes, a nonprofit independent and assisted living residence proudly serving the Cambridge community and local seniors for more than 130 years. Learn more at thecambridgehomes.org/tradition.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of BPR. January 6th rioters pardoned by Trump are now demanding refunds of the financial penalties paid to the government as part of their sentences. We'll talk with former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral about that and how ICE now believes they can enter your house without a warrant.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's Am I the A-Hole Day, where you can weigh in on who's in the wrong. This week, security cameras expose a nosy mother-in-law trying to look through the medicine cabinets and the rooms and the drawers while the family is away. Is that her right as a curious mother, or is it a boundary not to be crossed? Snooping in you. Call or text 877-301-8970. Next in the third hour at BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has presented a U.S. plan for disarming Hamas and rebuilding Gaza. Kushner is calling it New Gaza. NPR's Daniel Estrin has more from Tel Aviv.
Kushner presented a slideshow in Davos, Switzerland with his vision for rehabilitating Gaza. He presented simulated images of sleek skyscrapers on the shores of Gaza and a master plan envisioning an airport and seaport. He said cities could be rebuilt in Gaza within a few years.
In the Middle East, they build cities like this in 2-3 million people. They build this in 3 years. And so stuff like this is very doable if we make it happen.
He said the U.S. would host a donors conference soon to raise money for rebuilding Gaza. But he said key to this is disarming Hamas. His plan is for Hamas's heavy weapons to be immediately decommissioned, and those who disarm would be rewarded with amnesty and reintegration or safe passage out of Gaza. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The El Paso, Texas medical examiner is ruling a Cuban man's death at an immigration detention camp a homicide. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says it's investigating. Angela Kucherga with member station KTEP has the latest.
The autopsy report says 55-year-old Geraldo Lunas Campos died of asphyxia due to neck and torso compression. The report also notes the detainee became, quote, unresponsive while being restrained, according to witnesses. When ICE reported the January 5th death, it said Lunas Campos was, quote, in medical distress. The Department of Homeland Security said the detainee tried to take his own life, and staff intervened. The medical examiner's report also notes Lunas Campos' medical history includes a bipolar disorder and anxiety. Lunas Campos is the third person to die in custody at the tent facility located at Fort Bliss and operated by a private contractor. For NPR News, I'm Angela Kucherga in El Paso.
Former special counsel Jack Smith is defending his investigations of President Trump as he fields pointed questions from congressional Republicans. NPR's Carrie Johnson reports Smith's public testimony today is his first since his investigations ended.
Jack Smith presided over 2 criminal indictments of Trump for attempting to overturn the 2020 election and for hiding secret documents at his Florida resort. Neither case got to a jury before Trump returned to the White House last year. Smith says he had proof beyond a reasonable doubt in both cases and that he was not motivated by politics. He says if he had any regrets, it was not expressing enough support for the prosecutors and FBI agents who worked on the cases. Many of those public servants have been fired by the Trump administration. Some have faced threats, he says, for doing their jobs. Carrie Johnson, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The National Weather Service has issued not 1 but 2 weather alerts for the region as we head into the weekend. The first is a cold weather advisory that starts at 10 tomorrow evening and lasts until 10 a.m. on Saturday. It warns of extremely low temperatures that could pose risk to those without adequate protection or heating. And the second alert is a winter storm watch. That's in effect from 7 a.m. Sunday through 10 a.m. on Monday. Several inches of snow are expected, anywhere from 6 to 16 inches, they're saying. But because of the extreme low temperatures, that snow is expected to be light and fluffy and very easy to move around. And with that said, Newsflash Nancy says if you haven't yet gassed up the shovel, now is the time to do so. A North Atlantic right whale calf has become entangled off Cape Cod in fishing gear meant to prevent entanglements. Scott Landry of the Center for Coastal Studies says his team tried to attach buoys and floats to hold the whale still while they could remove the ropes. But the 1-year-old whale was so strong it broke free, including much of the fishing gear. Landry says that's because the gear was designed to break to help preventing entanglements.
And so, unfortunately, the amount of force that it takes for us to slow and stop a whale and keep it up on the surface, you can't really get that done when there are contrivances in the fishing gear that are set up to break.
The whale swam away with some rope wrapped around the base of its tail that may be able to disentangle itself, Landry says, but if not, the ropes will leave the whale vulnerable to infection. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Walton Family Foundation, working to create access to opportunity for people and communities by tackling tough social and environmental problems. More information is at waltonfamilyfoundation.org.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. On Tuesday at the library, we'll be joined by State Auditor Ayanna DeZoglio. She's doing what, Jim, please?
She's responding to some of the questions that were raised by the Attorney General when she was with us the other day. She said those are the questions she has said that the auditor must respond to, and we'll find out what her responses are if she chooses to respond.
Yeah, and this is about auditing the legislature.
The ballot question that passed was 71% of the vote.
Okay, next week, Governor Maura Healey will be with us from 12 to 1, also at the library, and starting February 2nd, and thank you to our bosses, we will be 2 hours instead of 3 here at GBH. We will be launching the Curiosity Desk show at 1 o'clock.
We're not launching anything except on our way to lunch.
No, we're not going to be launching it.
GBH is launching
They're
the Curiosity
launching it.
Desk.
That's right. They will be launching it, not you and I, Jim.
Yeah,
okay.
We'll be launching a martini at about 1:15. That's what we're going to be launching. Okay, I'm sorry. Shouldn't have said it. Can we cut that out?
That's the reason we're going to 2 hours, so
late.
Jim can have a martini at 1:15.
Okay, whatever. And we're joined now on Zoom by former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary, former Suffolk County Sheriff, and BPR contributor, Andrea Cabral. Welcome, Andrea.
Welcome. I can see you're really looking forward to that drink.
You don't even know. Good to see you.
So, Andrea, just today, Pam Bondi has authorized the Justice Department. They've arrested these 2 activists in Minnesota who were involved in organizing a protest at a St. Paul church. And I guess the minister there at the church was connected to ICE in some way. But I don't know. Can't you protest in a church, or is that not protected by the First Amendment, or what would they be charged with? Is my confusion.
Sure, you can protest in a church. This is another example of the Department of Justice torturing a federal statute to achieve its political ends. So the federal statute that they're using was a bill signed by Bill Clinton, I think in 1994. It's called the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. It was essentially enacted because people were protesting in front of abortion clinics, but not just protesting. They were attacking women who were going inside the clinics. They were destroying the property of the clinics. People will remember clinics were bombed, clinics were had rocks thrown through their windows, and so on and so forth. The statute, which is 18 U.S.C. Section 248, it prohibits 3 things, and all 3 require the use of physical force or the threat of physical force or physical obstruction with an intent to intentionally injure, intimidate, or interfere with, or make an attempt to do those things. Any person, in the case of clinic access, any person who is seeking access to an abortion, but it also has a provision that says any person trying to exercise their First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. In order, at least by my reading of the statute, in order for the federal government to have arrested these 2 people, because I've watched the video of the protest. And what happened was people came to the church. It was St. Paul's Church. I think it was in Minnesota.
Yep.
And sat down, listened to the service, waited for the pastor to finish his prayer. And then one woman who was arrested, and her name, I've got to go back and look at the story to get her name. She's actually an attorney.
Nikema Levy Armstrong.
Yes, stood and asked the pastor how the church could employ a man by the name of David Easterbrook, who is the regional director for ICE in that region, who is also employed as a pastor. And she went on to say, she had a microphone, she went on to say that these were not Christian values. What ICE was doing, disrupting communities, physically assaulting people, people dying. She mentioned Renee Good. She mentioned the Nicaraguan gentleman who was killed. She mentioned the baby that nearly died from tear gas. And she was basically putting the question to the pastor, how can the church, keep this person? Others stood up, started chanting ICE out. I saw nothing in that video where any parishioner was intimidated or was kept from worship. The service was disrupted, but no person was physically threatened did I see any attempt to physically threaten or injure any person who was there, including the pastor. So my question is, and they haven't released any details as to how this statute is applicable here, But my question is, where was the attempt to injure or intimidate, or actual injury or intimidation?
We're talking to Andrea Cabral. Speaking of breaking news of the day, and we don't overuse that on this show, Jack Smith, former special prosecutor into the behavior of Donald Trump, testified publicly in front of the House Judiciary Committee with the non-jacket-wearing, subpoena-avoiding chair, Jim Jordan. And this is we just have a small excerpt. I'm not sure huge amount of news was made, but here's Democratic Congressperson Priya Jayapal questioning Smith, in which he stands by, obviously, the findings of his work. It's rather long, but it's worth listening to.
Did your investigation find that Donald Trump attempted to manufacture fraudulent slates of presidential electors in 7 states that he lost?
Yes.
Did he spread lies and conspiracies to his followers to make them believe that the election had been illegally rigged against him?
Yes.
Did he pressure his own vice president, Mike Pence, to stop the certification against the oath of office that he had sworn to the Constitution?
He did.
And when all of this didn't work, did he, Donald Trump, motivate and inspire an angry mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the certification?
Our proof showed that he caused what happened on January 6th, that it was foreseeable, and that he exploited that violence.
And that's the president of the United States. Again, unless you feel there was a huge amount of news, feel free to say that. This was just the first time the public got to hear, other than a brief press statement from Jack Smith, and I think fairly compellingly, as we could tell, made the case that he had a case, and unfortunately wasn't brought in timely fashion, and as a result disappeared.
That's right. That's exactly what happened. And that largely, almost exclusively, came at the hands of Eileen Cannon, a federal judge from the Federalist Society in Florida, and the GOP majority in SCOTUS, who ensured that he would have immunity regardless. It made the cases irrelevant. But there's no question that everything that, in my mind anyway, that everything that Jack Smith said, and he shouldn't even have to defend this prosecution, is absolutely true. That's who is the president of the United States.
By the way, the only other name I'd add to that culpability list, but culpable in a different way, as we've said many a time on the show, is the he would call it deliberate, the incredibly snail-like speed with which the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, proceeded, caused that timeline.
Absolutely.
Sadly breach. One related thing, which I know is maybe you'll tell us, was legally unavoidable, but is so enraging. After the pardoning of these January 6 insurrectionists who let's use the word, attempted to overthrow the government of the United States of America, not only do they get pardoned and they're free, and I think in almost all cases the record of their conviction is gone, some of them are applying for the fines that were attendant to their part of their sentencing to get back. As one woman said, I forget her name, she wanted her $2,700 fine back. She said, "It's my money." I'm assuming that, unfortunately, that's the natural and unavoidable consequence of the pardons. Is that true?
Well, not strictly. Well, it is a consequence of the pardons, but less of the pardons themselves and more based on the posture of the cases when the pardons were issued. And I have no doubt in my mind that was well understood and well known, and that the Trump administration understood that this would be a consequence of that. So ordinarily, when a person is pardoned, whether they're pardoned at the state or the federal level, admission of guilt is part of that, right? And this is the part that I, quite frankly, am still sort of baffled about. In order to accept a pardon, you have to admit that you did it. When these people were pardoned, and it's not really clear whether or not they were even asking for pardons as much as Trump basically decided to let his co-conspirators go. Many of their cases were on appeal. When your case is on appeal, your conviction is not final. If your conviction is not final and then is subsequently dismissed It is as though the prosecution never existed. That is why you are entitled to your money back.
Boy, it is galling. The whole thing.
Well, but I will say this will make you feel better, Jim.
I doubt it.
There should be a way to take a look at how this has happened with these pardons and try to figure out whether or not the government in the Trump administration has done civil forfeitures of anybody's property, the civil forfeitures that we object to, that are such wholesale forfeitures. And perhaps pardons have happened where people that they wouldn't want to get their money back are entitled to their money back. I don't know. But it's if they're going to continue to torture the law like this, very intentionally to absolve co-conspirators with the president, it's time that we started looking for ways to fight back on that. I'm not sure where they are, but I agree with you. Of everything I read today, and you guys really sent me a set of stories that almost killed me.
I know. Isn't it terrible? Isn't it terrible?
Yeah, this one came the closest.
Yeah.
By the way, our attitude when we send out a story is, why should we be the only two who are suffering? That's the approach we have to the show.
That's right.
By the way, can I say one more thing?
It's tough to read a lot of this stuff, Andrea. You just think, what is going on?
You cut out for 1 second, so if you said this, apologies. I shouldn't have cited the example of the $2,700 for the woman because it seems so little. Some of the people got pardons had been sent into jail because, for example, of stealing the tax payments of employees that would cause benefits to accrue to the employee. So when they get those millions of dollars back, in some cases, not only are they being unjustly enriched, I would argue, they're screwing a second time the people who they illegally stole money from in their employ. So it's like a second crime. Well, and then
the American taxpayer foots the bill.
Exactly.
For all of the broken windows, the damage, the defecation. All of that, the increased security. No, this is, and like I said, there is no doubt in my mind that this was understood at the time of the pardon.
I agree with you.
Just a quick aside, a lot of people whose cars have been very damaged by ice or whose homes have been damaged by ice, I wonder if they're stuck.
I never thought about that.
With, breaking in the windows and...
Trump says we'll pay for the damages right away. There's
I don't think so. The woman's seatbelt was cut out and the cars are left rolling down the street and ramming at other cars.
Hospital bills.
That's right. That 16-year-old United States American citizen. He was a United States citizen, terrible hospital because he was allegedly chokeholded, and that's not the correct word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, putting a chokehold.
Okay. So we're always looking for the tide to turn, Andrea, the worm to turn, whatever phrase you want to use. And of course, we're always disappointed. But we were a little bit happy. Trump is after the Fed. He wants to control the Fed. He's having the Justice Department go after Jerome Powell, who's the head of the Fed. And he was trying to get rid of this Lisa Cook with these unproven claims about mortgage fraud. Well, the Supreme Court yesterday seemed they were skeptical that he can fire Lisa Cook from the board, Federal Reserve Board, that is, without even giving her a chance to contest the allegations. So I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to find a little hope here in the depressing lawlessness of this administration.
I always say this, one of the things that I love about you most is that you are, you're a very good person and you're an optimist.
Yeah.
Okay, she is.
I will say this.
Okay. I'm ready.
They will protect the Fed and people shouldn't make the mistake all the time of thinking that the reason that the GOP majority in SCOTUS protects Trump is because they love Trump. They know exactly what he is. And there are probably those among them who despise who and what he is as an individual.
I agree with that.
But he gets the job done in terms of who they care about and the interests they want to protect in the long term. And he allows himself to be the dirty, filthy face of what they want to do so that no one can directly blame them. So protecting the Fed protects financial interests and the stability they need in those financial interests so that all of the billionaires and millionaires whose largesse people like Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito benefit so greatly from. And these are the people who put them, after they leave the bench, put them on boards or fill their coffers in so many other ways, or are just part of the group that they want to be in and what they want to represent in this country. That's who they're trying to protect. They will swallow it whole that it's Lisa Cook, the black woman on the Fed, that they end up directly protecting if they can, as part of a larger agenda, protect the Fed from Trump, because they know as well as anybody else that he is unstable, that he doesn't care whether or not, that the king of bankruptcies and not paying back loans doesn't care what he does to the financial situation in this country. But the people who own the GOP majority do care about the financial future of this country.
I'm going to...
Okay, that takes care of that,
no,
Andrea.
I'm not upset. I'm rarely optimistic. Let me tell you what I am optimistic about, though. And I agree with your analysis of why this, sadly, may be an outlier. I've been thinking nonstop about this grossly delayed decision on tariffs, which could be monumental. Maybe not quite as important as the immunity case, but pretty close, because this is what he uses to sanction anybody. The argument in this case, correct me if I'm wrong, the case they're now deciding, again, that should have been decided months ago because of the consequences, he says the reason I did these tariffs that are being challenged, national emergency, and as we say every time we talk about this, the national emergency he started with was the trade deficit. We've had a trade deficit for 49 straight years, which is not my definition of an emergency. However, when the most recent evidence, and I don't know if this
is almost too much to believe.
I don't know if this is rightfully before the court, because it just happened a couple of days ago. When the President of the United States threatens to raise the tariffs on champagne by 200% because Macron, the president, has said, I'm not going to join the Board of Peace that met today, or the European countries that refuse to give them Greenland, not that they have the power to do it, in NATO, are going to have 10 and then 25% tariffs. Of course, he backed off it yesterday because they refused to give me Greenland. What possible argument, other than Alito and Thomas, what possible argument could they make to say that he has the power unilaterally, without congressional approval, to do these tariffs every day when he gets upset with anybody? What?
None. I don't think that there is one. But I also said that about presidential immunity. It's found nowhere in the Constitution or any place else. They literally made it up. So I don't want to underestimate their capacity for finding a rationale. And I really do hope that you're correct about the potential for this to be a good decision and the tariff decision to be a good one. I read this as they have a history, they've established a pattern of giving with one hand and taking back with the other. And that the delay on the tariff thing may be because they plan to protect the Fed and not give him what he wants on Lisa Cook, only to give him what he wants on tariffs. And I hope that I am wrong.
Can I tell you what my analysis is? And this is an optimistic one, even though I would bet you're more likely to be right than I am. I think the blowback from Trump is going to be so intense if they rule that he does not have the constitutional authority to do this, that I'm hoping, I'm going to put faith in the man that Marjorie used to have faith in, that Roberts knows he can't do this 5-4. He's got to, Alito and Thomas are hopeless. He's got to get 6 or 7 votes if he's going to do what the president said would be the worst atrocity ever committed to a sitting president. Don't you think that's at least possible, that he knows he needs a supermajority?
It's possible. It is possible. The reason that I take the tack that I do is because I'm a firm believer that, when people show you who they are, you should believe them. And they have such a heinous, I don't even have words for it, egregious pattern of these decisions that I don't have any faith in them. And so I find it really difficult to form the words that suggest otherwise.
Can I raise one last quick thing, and we'll have a couple minutes?
Imagine what it's like to be a liberal in the Supreme Court.
I don't know how you go to work every day.
Ketanji Brown Jackson has touched on that, how difficult it is, and she's been so courageous
How'd you like to be a member of the House under Johnson and go to work every day? I mean, the only hope is you may take the majority come November. We only have a minute or two left. Just quickly, there's an ICE memo I know you've read about that now says that ICE agents have the ability to enter someone's house. That means your house, if you're listening right now, friends, without a warrant. Is that what happened to the Fourth Amendment? What's the deal there? No, I'm serious.
Constitution's out the window. Isn't that the deal?
They're wrong, and they're lying, like they lie about everything. But again, torturing the law. Remember Gonzalez and the torture memo?
Yes.
Literally torturing the law to your own ends. These are administrative warrants. The Fourth Amendment trumps administrative warrants. We talked about this on this show nearly a decade ago about why administrative warrants, which are just issued by any ICE official, are nowhere near what it takes to get a warrant from a judge, which is what lets you into the privacy of someone's own home. So, of course, they don't have the authority to do this. That's why they circulated the memo internally to higher-ups. Even though there are people that are being trained, being told that they can enter these houses, they know what's going to happen now that everybody knows that this memo is out. And this is the point where higher-ups need to be brought to court and to face punishment by courts for doing this. You talk about civil rights violations. This is knowingly violating people's civil rights coming from the top, coming from people like Todd Lyons. So no, they don't have the authority to do this. I don't know whether or not a court will wait until they do it and get caught doing it pursuant to the memo or not. But the bottom line is this is more of the same headed toward this authoritarian issue where you don't have rights of privacy at all, not in your home, not in your car, not at your church, not anywhere, if the federal government, in the person of ICE agents or others, decides you're someone they want. And
Sounds
people
like you should
wake up to that.
You should join us for that martini, I think, in February.
I wish I drank. I would.
Yeah, if we had time, we don't have time to talk about it, but there was a five-year-old taken into custody by ICE in Minnesota. The family members begged ICE agents to leave the child with the family members who were in the house, and they ignored it, and they took him. And this 5-year-old is in some detention center. I mean, I just can't believe it.
Well, don't think for a second that they're checking deeds to see who owns these homes that they plan on going into.
Yeah.
The fact that someone may be there and is subject to removal doesn't mean they own the house, doesn't mean they have a property interest in that house, and those people have Fourth Amendment rights, even if you believe that the person who's subject to deportation does not.
Andrea, as always, thanks.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Andrea.
Take care.
Okay, we've been speaking with Andrea Cabral, former sheriff of Suffolk County and former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary. Okay, thank goodness. Coming up after this quick break, a little diversion from the most important news stories of the day. It's Am I the A-hole time? Today's prompt involves a nosy mother-in-law snooping around their kid's apartment when they're away. Who's the bigger jerk? The snoopy mother-in-law or the spouse who wants to confront them? And Jim may have a confession to make when we get back.
No, I do not. Really?
I'm Marjorie Egan. God. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to you didn't say it was off the record. You're listening to BPR 897 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Rolfe. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, Governor Maura Healey is delivering her State of the Commonwealth address tonight, including new efforts to lower utility costs. A look at South Africa after the Trump administration slashed foreign aid funding, and practical ways for activists to stay engaged and avoid burnout during a heavy news cycle. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds. New properties are added often. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Direct Federal Credit Union, a Needham-based financial institution providing loans, saving solutions, and financial wellness resources for members across every stage of life. Learn more by visiting direct.com. Direct Federal, member NCUA.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow. By the way, Marjorie's going to tell you at the end of the show, the music tomorrow is a fabulous thing. So stick around for another 25 minutes and Marjorie will tell you who the performers are and what the effort is. The auditor joins us on Tuesday in part to continue the saga between her and the Attorney General about enforcing the ballot question that 71% of the people said we want the legislature audited, and the governor's here next Friday. So today's Am I the A-Hole takes many twists and turns, so you got to listen carefully. A married couple is living with the husband's parents, two women, parents of the guy, of the husband. They pay rent, the couple does, and they are only there temporarily. Well, the laundry room is in a shared area downstairs where the young couple's living. So the in-laws come in, his in-laws come in and out often. But the couple recently had a baby and went on a trip out of town with the baby, leaving the mother-in-laws to watch their dog and cat. Everybody, that's clear so far, right? Yes. Okay. The couple set up a pet camera. They didn't tell the mothers-in-law about this and happened to catch one of the mothers-in-law snooping through their living space while they're away. Not just the open laundry space in the main living area, but their bedroom too. On camera, the mother-in-law jiggles the knob, realizes it's locked, and says, "Oh my God," in an annoyed tone. That's their bedroom, according to this Reddit poster. Later footage shows the mother-in-law going back and trying to open the door to the bedroom again. So who's the a-hole? The mother-in-law who doesn't respect private spaces, I know that's oxymoronic to some of you, or the young couple who expects privacy at all when they're living in their parents' house. The number's 877-301-897. Where are you on this?
It's the mother-in-law poking through the house.
She's the a-hole.
Absolutely.
Well, that is borderline ridiculous. And the reason, by the way, let me just be clear.
Okay.
I don't want you putting words in my mouth, so I want to say this carefully.
All right.
I'm not condoning the snooping.
You're not?
No, but the young married couple, you should not have an expectation that people are not going to snoop through your house, because trust me, everybody does it when they're given an opportunity. And I bet you the young couple does it in places too. So again, I want to repeat this before Marjorie bastardizes what I'm saying. I am not excusing or condoning the snooping.
So where have you, snooped?
Since everybody does it, the young couple were naive and a-holes because they expected otherwise. 877-301-8997.
Could you detail one or two of your snooping experiences?
No, I could not.
What were you looking for?
Well,
Was it the medicine cabinet?
You ever go to a party? You ever go to a party?
Yes.
You ever go to the bathroom at the person's house? What do you do when you go to the bathroom?
I go to the bathroom.
Okay, do you look through the medicine cabinet like everybody else?
The only time I've done it is when I really needed an Advil, and I was looking for an Advil.
Okay, and probably every time you need an Advil. Is that what you're saying? Okay, let's assume the party's on the first floor.
That's terrible.
Let's assume the party's on the first floor.
Yeah.
And you have to go up to the second floor. I got to lie down for a minute. I had an extra drink. I lie down for a minute. And they say, sure, go upstairs.
Yeah.
You go in their bedroom. You don't pull open the drawers and look through their stuff. Come on, Marjorie. Don't do this.
I don't.
Of course you do.
I don't. I think it's terrible.
I would bet that 98%, our audience is going to be torn because on its face, people will have your position. They shouldn't be snooping until people look in the mirror and realize that everybody takes an opportunity to look at other people's stuff. The one exception we both discussed.
And this is a man who is upset because he's got this ratty bookshelf over there
in the studio
with about 25 ratty books in it, and he doesn't want anybody to move it into the hallway but himself. So you don't want anybody to touch your ratty bookshelf, which is in front of everybody. Yeah. But you're opening people's drawers in their bedrooms.
Yeah, like everybody else is doing too. By the way, I don't sneak into the bedroom. If I happen to be in their bedroom, I may pull open a drawer and check it out. Now, let me just say one more thing. Get this cleared up here. Marjorie and I discussed one thing we do have in common. Neither of us snooped in our kids' drawers. When your three kids were young, my two kids, I just thought that was such a lack of trust.
Well, one time I did. I was putting some laundry in one of my kids' drawers, and
you happened to see
find something there. Yeah. Oh. And then you're in the dilemma. Do you say something? And I wasn't snooping. I was putting the laundry away.
So you were there otherwise?
Yeah, I never heard the end of it either.
Can I explain myself, by the way?
What?
Well, there was one circumstance where I laid down in someone else's bedroom because I was tired during a particular event. I decided to put away their laundry. So I took their laundry. I happened to put it in one of the drawers. and the drawer opened. What can I say? By the way, I really want honest callers here. I want to know if people do not. I know it's sort of a weird negative. Everybody snoops on other people's stuff if they think they're not going to be caught.
Here's a good one. Jim is allowed to snoop because he got an administrative warrant.
Okay, 877-301-8970. Who's the a-hole? Let me recap briefly. This young couple with a baby go away. They asked the mothers-in-law, whose house it is, to watch the dog and the cat. The young couple left, set up a pet camera. By the way, is that not a-holic enough to set up a camera without telling the whatever they're called, the parents that you're doing it?
Yeah, they claim they did it to make sure the dogs and cats were okay.
And that's like a double a-hole kind of thing on their part. 877, what's it?
They moved the goalpost with the Am I the A-hole segment. In the first hour, it was checking the medicine cabinet. Now it's breaking and entering.
That is digital and innovation
That's
on YouTube
a good one.
getting to us. Okay, let's take some
Okay, a lot of people are on your side, though, Jim. Here's one. If they want privacy, they should get their own place. The parents own the place and should have access to everything. And Mary from Worcester says, I'm horrified Jim would even say that. Remind me never to invite him to my house for a party.
Can I tell you one other thing? You know, one of my kids took, I think it was my older daughter, took this course. MIT has these great science-related courses for young kids. I think my kid was like 12 or 13 at the time. You know, one of the courses was, I'm raising my right hand, this is true, lock picking. And so had one of the mother-in-laws taken that course at MIT. By the way, we haven't told people. We're going to have the president of MIT.
Right? Yes, we are.
President of MIT is with us on Monday.
Yes, I'm very excited.
And she has really been a courageous soul. But yeah, she took that course, and there it was.
Here's one more message directed at you, Jim. Ross from Quincy.
Please.
Jim, everybody does it.
Yes.
Can I remind you of the old adage?
What is it?
The thief thinks everyone steals.
Yeah, well, okay. It's not stealing. It's just checking out people's stuff. It's not. By the way, everybody's curious, and it's good, well-intentioned.
Okay, just one more thing before we get to the calls. 877-301-8970. What are you looking for in the medicine cabinet? You're looking for drugs?
Nothing.
Or you're looking to see if there's...
It's not to... No, it's nothing. It's just... It's curiosity. How do other people live their lives? I would consider it sort of like an anthropological expedition into people's drawers.
All right, we're just going to play one more thing before we get to the calls. This is a little scene from Seinfeld.
What is it?
In this episode, Jerry sneaks a peek into his girlfriend's medicine cabinet and finds a tube of fungicide. In this clip, he recounts that to Elaine and Kramer.
I want to know, what were you doing opening her medicine cabinet?
I didn't open it. It was open. I just nudged it a little.
You were snooping.
I was not snooping. I did not break the seal. There was no breaking and entering. I wouldn't do that. I would. I always open medicine cabinets.
Well, I trust people not to do that.
Big mistake.
Let's go to Jeff in Medway. Who is the a-hole here, Jeff? Welcome to the show.
Hi. I think that the mother-in-law is the a-hole.
Why?
Absolutely.
I rent a space to my son. It's a separate apartment over the garage.
Okay.
I respect his privacy. I have a key to get in there if I need to get in there, but I don't go in there because it's not my space.
You're not curious at all?
I'm curious. You know, curiosity killed the cat.
No, I heard that once, and luckily I'm not a cat. Hey, Jeff, thank you. That was an excellent start to the discussion. We appreciate it. I have a feeling a lot of honorable, ethical people like Jeff will take that position. It happens to be the wrong position, but... But no, I think a lot of people, he sounds like a very honorable, decent guy.
So it's interesting. You would not snoop in your children's drawers when they were growing up, and you might be looking for contraband, but you would snoop at someone who invited you over for like a Christmas party or something like that. Yeah,
of course.
Of course.
And by the way, I want you examine your soul. The one you say you look for an Advil once in a medicine cabinet. You've never looked in other people's stuff before.
I cannot think of a time that I looked in somebody's drawers or medicine cabinet. Now listen to this one. One way to catch a guest snooping in your medicine cabinet is to put marbles in it so they all fall out when the cabinet is open. That's a pretty good one.
But you'd forget the cabinet.
I would forget the marbles were in the cabinet. That's right.
Where do you want to go?
Alyssa in Dedham. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Alyssa.
Hey, how you doing? I got to say I'm with Marjorie on this one. And so here, I say that the mother-in-law is definitely the a-hole. Here's my question. If you think you raised your children right, why do you feel like you need to snoop on them as adults, as married adults? And if you feel like you need to snoop on them, what are you going to do about it now? And then you guys raised the two separate issues of, I'd snoop in some stranger's cabinet that they invited me to a party. I mean, and then versus, hey, I'm going to snoop in my kids' stuff now. So those are two separate issues. And I'm going to say I'm with Marjorie. If I needed an Advil, I would just ask or, quickly look through, and I don't want to know what you're taking. I don't care.
Yeah. Okay, Alyssa, wait a second. You sounds like, sadly, another principled person calling the show. You've never been at someone's house and your curiosity, to use Jeff's term, just got the best of you and you just looked around? No? Oh,
no, I have people in my life, I swear, that tell me what they're feeling, and I swear if I was questioning their motives or their sanity, I would not look through their medicine cabinet. I would just talk to them first.
Well, it's incredible. Thank you, Alyssa. Another fine person. Can I be clear about this?
Okay, we have a distinction.
Because I'm being criticized a lot. I want to be clear
we have
about,
a couple of people with
I
you,
want to
Jim.
be clear about one thing before we get there. I don't take photographs of what I see. That is crossing a line that I would... Okay, I just want to clarify.
Okay.
Go ahead.
A texter says, I realize I might be an a-hole. I do snoop in people's medicine cabinets if I'm in their bedrooms sometimes. But no, Jim, I don't pull out their bedroom doors.
Well, what if, like Seinfeld, what if the drawer is partially open? I'm serious.
They just nudge it out a little bit more.
It's beckoning you to continue the...
One of the texters said he went snooping in your house, Jim. You know what they found?
I don't want to know.
A shot put in the closet.
Oh, that's funny. Let's leave it at that. You and the texter.
What happened to the woman who owns the shot put?
We're moving along. We're going to Ann in Cranston. Hello, Ann. How are you?
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Thank you. The mother-in-law is the asshole.
A-hole, we call it here.
Sorry.
Yeah,
that's okay.
It's okay. Why is that?
It's, while they are renting space, and I think, and you're a lawyer, Jim,
sort of.
If you're renting space, don't you, part of it is privacy? Like, it's your space as long as you're renting?
Yeah.
But the other thing is it's none of her business.
Yeah.
Absolutely none of her business. And I'm a mother-in-law, and I wouldn't do something like that.
You wouldn't?
No.
What if the bedroom door was open rather than locked? Would you go in there?
No.
Wow. What an incredible group. And thank you. Another similar soul. We really appreciate that. See what Matt in Gloucester said? I would read that text if you were Marjorie.
I heard that heated rivalry was mostly filmed with hidden cameras by the mothers-in-law. That is a great point. Lots of people have hidden cameras in their house now, and you can get caught doing things like when teens have parties, and there's hidden cameras, and the teens are being monitored by the schools because whether they're at parties where there's booze or people are drinking. I've heard of a few incidents where
by the way, you haven't commented on the second a-hole issue that I broached before. How about the kids, the young couple, putting cameras up and not telling the mothers-in-law about that?
Did it say they didn't tell them?
Yes, it does say
sure
they
about
didn't.
that.
It did, it totally did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you going to say about that?
Oh, you're right. They put up the pet camera without telling them. They probably should have told them they were putting up the pet camera, and that way they'd be extra attentive to the pets while they were gone.
Yeah, but the only problem is if they told them about the pet camera, then they couldn't go through their stuff.
Of course, they also point out that the a-hole mothers-in-law did the same thing to them before they went out of town. So it's a tit-for-tat kind of situation.
Anonymous texter says, who is ever asking Jim over after this? No wonder Jared has never had him over. By the way, how much would you like to go through Jared's medicine cabinet? Are you kidding me?
Okay.
Oh, my God.
Somebody just wrote here that they were horrified. They went down and they opened their parents' medicine cabinet. You know what they found in there?
No.
A bunch of condoms. They were beside themselves.
That's tough.
Mom and Dad. Oh, no.
Effie, you're in Rhode Island. You're on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi. Jim, I apologize, but you are the a-hole here.
Thank you. Not the first time. Go ahead.
I don't even go through my wife's purse without permission. There is no way that you go into somebody's home, they pay rent, they are awarded privacy, and because it's their space in their home, they don't have to tell somebody they put cameras up. That's irrelevant. They're doggy cams. They're kitty cams.
They're kitty cams. That's right.
They weren't expecting Mama to go through their stuff. They were expecting Mama to be petting the cat and the dog. They weren't expecting any of that. So the mom's a jerk. The mom is the problem. And I am a mom, and I don't even go through my son's stuff, and he's 10. You just don't do that.
Boy, that's
I'm with you, Effie.
That is fairly forceful there, Effie. Thank you for your call.
Thank you for your passionate call. That was great. Listen to this from Seth. It's from Seth in Rhode Island.
I was the a-hole, and you didn't defend me at all. Nothing.
I don't think you're an a-hole, Jim.
Yes, you do.
I really don't.
Yes,
you have
you
your quirks. We all are familiar with them.
Yeah, we do.
Listen to this.
Yeah.
I was snooping in my newly married ex's bathroom.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
I can see why some people might do that.
Yeah.
But I hit my head so hard on the sink due to the configuration, I opened my fork, cut it, and then he had to rejoin the party with a bloody gash on his forehead and have to explain it.
Story. It's horrible.
Yeah, but you can see where people might be. They're in a trauma post-divorce. They're snooping on their ex.
Do you believe everybody who's called thinks it's unprincipled, unethical, whatever it is to be snooping? You agree with them, don't you? That you just shouldn't do that?
Well, to be
good.
serious for a second,
Yeah.
I shouldn't be serious.
I'm being serious.
But I had a friend growing up whose parents were always looking at her drawers. And I remember how much it upset her because she said, I'm not even doing these things, and they're looking for stuff.
Yeah, but you and I both agree you shidn't go through your kids' stuff. It's a lack of trust in your kid.
Yeah, and that's why I always thought it was bad because do you go back to the party and say, I just looked through the drawers? I just looked through the medicine cabinet?
No, I just put in my pocket the stuff I'm interested in. And then put it back exactly. Anonymous texter says, Jim is overqualified for ICE.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Okay. I'm going to go with the triple A-hole in this case. The kids for the camera, the mom for snooping, and Jim, who needs to get a life. How about that one, Jim?
Okay, Catherine in Weston, thanks for the call. We really appreciate it.
Hi. I think first and foremost, the mother-in-law is the a-hole.
Okay, I wrote that down.
Okay. But I have to say that I think the son and the daughter-in-law kind of played it wrong. So, for example, I think there was some trust issues there to begin with, given the fact that they installed a camera that they felt they had to, and then also locked the door. So rather than be outraged, I would have probably, if the mother-in-law is looking for something, I would have given her something to find. Like, I would have stocked that medicine cabinet with so many controversial things.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, trick him.
That when she opened it up,
Well, Dano and Dudley just texted us, similar theme. The couple should have left adult toys laying around. Problem solves itself. Exactly.
Or stuff, and then they'd be sitting there. Do we say it? Yeah. Do we tell them that we saw these things, or we don't tell them we saw these things? Yeah, that's
and
a pretty
by the way,
good
you
one.
can get those at Toys of Eros, where one of the leaders is Jordan Hudson's mother. You can check it out in Providence. What we are talking about. Catherine, thank you.
Several people have texted about this marble thing. Apparently, this is a thing that a great party prank. You buy a couple of gallons of cheap marbles, empty the medicine cabinet, and fill it with the marbles. So that when somebody goes in to open it up, they all come out flying out by the hundreds, and then you get caught.
Do you think people do that?
Well, this is about the fifth text I've gotten.
Well, you know what? Well, can I respond to that? Because I actually have some experience of that. Whenever I go in someone's bathroom at somebody else's house and you're about to open the medicine cabinet, you flush the toilet repeatedly. So it will drown out the sound of the marbles hitting the ceramic sink.
Where's Jim? Well, he's been in the bathroom for 20 minutes. That's because it was 2,757 marbles he had to pick up. Let's go to Jay.
By the way, do you think how great is that? How humiliated if you did that?
Imagine
and
that.
People are like in the next room and they hear all the marbles.
The marbles, they know.
What do you do? What do you say then?
Well, that's like I have this friend who's very very neat and worried about bed sheets and stuff like that.
Jared?
No.
Okay.
But what she does is she puts if she's going to go to somebody's house, she puts that she hasn't been to, that she goes to frequently, she puts a hair on the pillowcase or the bed sheets to make sure someone has changed the sheets.
Really? At someone else's house?
Yeah.
That's rather...
Because she doesn't believe the person who says they changed the sheets.
Yeah.
So that's what she does.
That's almost as bad as going through somebody's drawers. I mean, that's
like James Bond. Remember, he used to put the piece of hair on the door to see if the bad guy knew it came in to search through his room.
You know that James Bond was fiction, right? Do you aware of that? Or
I am, but I figure the writer, that Ian Fleming guy, I figured he'd maybe go, maybe he was a snooper too.
Let me just say, before we get back to the ghost, I could see you because you're so good at planning things.
I'm very good at planning,
I can see you do that. By the way, Marjorie gets to work this morning, and the first thing she says to me is I have to go home. And I say, you just were home. Why would you have to go home?
Yeah, I have a problem.
Why'd you have to go home? I forget.
Because I forget stuff. Today I spent a lot of time making my lunch, and I walked out without my lunch, and I walked out without the milk, and I walked about, half my stuff, my books. I mean, I had to go home and
so you had to
everything up.
You had to go home right after you got here.
I went home.
And got all the stuff you didn't bring, and then you came back here.
That's correct.
I remember that very well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I told Carl in the front office.
You did?
He felt bad.
He felt bad called
for
the
me.
lobby, by the way.
He felt bad for me that I had to do that.
Jay in Boston, who's the a-hole?
Hi, good afternoon. How are you guys doing?
We're excellent.
Fine, thank you
for asking.
Good. So it sounds like we're dealing with a waiting room of a-holes here. I think
okay.
It sounds like we're at a doctor's appointment. And everybody's getting their a-hole stuff. There's a few different things happening here. Real life experiences that so we're dealing with mother-in-laws, but we said that it's the son. They're living with the son's parents, right?
I think so. Yeah.
The son's.
No.
It's the daughter.
Yes, it's the husband's parents.
It's the husband's. Okay.
It's the husband's parents.
But
yeah,
where are you
two
going
women.
with that, Jay? Go ahead.
Right. So when you're I'm 100% a mama's boy. So I always expect and anticipate that my mom will snoop no matter where I am or what's going on. So I set traps. I set traps because I know the snooping is gonna happen. So what I'll do is, and this is a real life situation that's happened before, is I had a bouquet of flowers in a room that we were renting from my parents at the time, and I knew she was going to be curious. And when she was looking for the card to see who the bouquet of flowers were for, she found the card and it was addressed to her.
Oh,
you are a genius.
That's a nice day.
That is really.
And the snooping stopped after that, right?
Jay,
typically they're looking, especially mama boys. They're looking to confirm or dispel some kind of myth, right? Like they know what they're looking for, right? It's like an episode of Inspector Gadget. They know what they're looking for. And
Jay, the thing I love about you, beyond that was a great thing you did there, is you've thought a lot about this. And I love that fact. And thank you. Now, before we end this, person who has a different approach than Jay, doing that sweet thing for his mother, anonymous texter, I used to put dildos, condoms, and pregnancy tests in my medicine cabinet when entertaining with a note saying, no, these aren't for you.
Oh, God.
There you go. Now,
that's pretty good.
Jared is going to pretend that when he goes to somebody's house, he does not do exactly what I do. He can't make eye contact, which means he's going to make up what he's saying. You don't search through someone else's medicine cabinet?
No.
Or open their drawers in the bedroom?
First of all, I came in early because two things. One, you were talking smack about me. And
I was.
Two, I love this topic.
Okay.
So I know the marble trick. I've heard about the marble trick.
I didn't know about it.
So I would be terrified. So I have a couple things. One, I would be terrified to snoop because you know you're going to get caught. By the way, both people are jerks in this situation because everybody knows everybody has cameras in their house. So you have to assume somebody's going to have a camera. You also have to assume people are going to be snooping in your house. So just get over it. My other thing is I could never snoop because I would be terrified that I would be caught, and how mortifying. Also,
how mortifying. Exactly. Imagine how you'd feel.
That would be horrible. Also, do you want to know what your friends are doing? Like, do I need to know why you have the fluffernutter in your bedside table? No, I don't want to know that. I will never look at you the same.
Yeah.
Wow, another man who has thought through this very carefully.
I tell you, the marble thing, apparently I had several texts talking about that.
That is scary.
So apparently that goes on, Jim. Better watch out.
To counter Jim flushing the toilet 1,500 times so you can put all the marbles back, I just put a tarantula in my medicine cabinet.
By the way,
when you come back to the living room and you're falling over.
If you go to Wirecutter at the New York Times and search marble catcher, they have the best quiet, soft marble catchers. It's $19.99.
You just have to bring them with you to every party you go to.
Oh my God.
Okay.
What are you doing?
What are
we
you
know
doing
what
your
you're
show?
doing. It's great. What are you doing?
Yeah, so we have Claire Foy on the show today.
Huge.
The
That's
actor,
great.
of course, from The Crown.
Good for
and
you.
Wolf Hall and Masterpiece. I don't know if you read that memoir from a number of years ago, from 2014, H is for Hawk.
No.
It's a memoir written by Helen MacDonald about losing her father, and so she's so bereft because, as she says in the film, he's the only person who understood me, that she turns to falconry. She becomes very interior and turns to falconry and adopts this goshawk, which are huge predators, and establishes this relationship. So in Claire Foy, this is not AI, this is not CG. She was with this hawk doing this filming. So
Did we talk about this
that.
yesterday, or we were going to talk about it? We never got to it. Did
We
talk
never
about
talked about it.
We never talked about it.
We just said we were
okay.
jealous that he had Claire Foy and we don't.
Wolf Hall's what? Isn't that what Mark Rylance?
Yes.
Yeah. Talk about how great was that when he was here?
He was great.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
Yeah, he's a great actor.
She played Anne Boleyn in that. And then we have Stephanie Tharassi, who, this is an amazing story. This wilderness in Manitoba, Canada, has been now preserved by Indigenous groups. We know what happened in Canada. We know what happened in the United States. They're bringing it back to preserved land. She'll talk about all her efforts to do that. And then Mary Grant is here to talk about
Mary's a great guest. She's
art
great.
countering attention span problems.
Yeah.
Thank
By the
you,
way,
Jared.
can I just give a preview? In February, it's going to be Pledge Week. We are the second day, I believe it is, for $10.99 a month. Jim and Marjorie marbles. It says little Jim and Marjorie faces on the marbles.
That's right. So when you get caught, at least you'll have some
$10.99 a month or
fun
143 old ones or whatever.
Okay, thank you, Jared.
We'll be
and thank
listening.
you to everybody who listened to us. You can keep up with us 24/7 wherever our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we are Music Friday, the first ever
great.
performance of the new You Can't Beat Boston song, which is created, written, and performed by Berkeley students. This is going to be great. They're so talented. It's launching a new market campaign for the city and region. We'll also speak with Berkeley College of Music Dean Rodney Alejandro and CEO of Ocean Spray, Tom Hayes.
I'm dying to meet both of them. That's great.
I know.
That's part of the music thing, by the way, if it isn't obvious. Yeah,
That's
okay.
right. Callie Crossley and Ron Mitchell will be there. He's from the Bay State Banner for our press play, and 2 members of the Massachusetts Special Commission on Combating Anti-Semitism, the Red Sox Dave Friedman and State Representative Simon Cataldo, and we'll check in with GBH meteorologist Dave Epstein on this big storm that's supposed to come this weekend.
That's actually an appealing show.
I know, it sounds really good.
I'm going to
doesn't
show
it?
up for that. Yeah.
Yep. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John LaClaw Parker, our executive producer, Jane Bologna. Stay tuned to the Culture Show with Jared Bone, which starts right after us here on 89.7 GBH.
No, this is where you... Egan.
I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Bradley.
Thank you so much
Oops.
for tuning
See
in.
you tomorrow.
Hope you can come in tomorrow or
Bye.
see us tomorrow at the Boston Public Library. Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Fixed Dental, offering permanent teeth-on implants, customized in their laboratory, enabling their doctors and technicians to oversee every aspect of the smile design. Learn more about all the treatments offered at Fixed at fixeddental.com. At a Danish hotel, rumors of riches, love affairs, and family squabbles run rampant among the guests. Checking in under drama, anyone? Don't miss Seaside Hotel tonight at 10 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, actor Claire Foy. She reigned as Anne Boleyn in Wolf Hall and soon after became internationally recognized for her portrayal of a young Queen Elizabeth II in The Crown. Foy has since built a career defined by range, from psychological thrillers to historical dramas, and by a drive to take on roles that are altogether fresh. Her latest film is an adaptation of the Helen Macdonald memoir H is for Hawk. She plays a woman navigating grief through the rigorous and exacting exercise of training a goshawk. Then we're on to a vast northern wilderness in Manitoba, Canada, a sublime landscape of rivers, forests, and migrating wildlife. It was once home to Indigenous communities who were its stewards. Now Stephanie Tharassi is at the forefront of an Indigenous effort to again protect these lands. She joins us ahead of a screening of her documentary at the Peabody Essex Museum. And hotel art has always been code for bland, forgettable decor. Now it's met its soulmate with AI-generated art. Boston's Midtown Hotel is under fire for hanging algorithm-made Warhol knockoffs instead of featuring actual art created by local artists. Mary Grant, president of Mass Art, joins us for that and more. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Actress Claire Foy came to international attention as the young Queen Elizabeth II in The Crown, anchoring the series with a performance that emphasized the private cost of being the Queen, the isolation, restraint, and personal compromise that come with wearing the crown. And that was on the royal heels of playing Anne Boleyn in our own masterpiece series, Wolf Hall, here on PBS. Since then, she's moved across film and television, deliberately taking on roles that avoid repetition, a marriage under strain in First Man, the tight, unsettling world of Unsane, and the collective reckoning at the center of Women Talking. Her latest film is H is for Hawk, adapted from Helen Macdonald's 2014 memoir of the same name. Foy plays MacDonald, who takes up the demanding and sometimes dangerous work of training a goshawk. That's after the sudden death of her father. The discipline of falconry is a way to endure grief one day at a time.
My dad, he was a quiet man with a camera.
Watch carefully so you remember what you've seen.
And he was the only person who understood me. And now he's gone. I miss him terribly.
There'll be a time when all this seems like a bad dream. But Dad wouldn't want us to mope. You're not moping now, are you?
No.
H is for Hawk opens in area theaters this Friday. Claire Foy, an Emmy and Golden Globe Award-winning actor, joins us to talk about it all. Welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I wasn't expecting such an introduction. Thank you.
We do that here.
You're good at it.
Thanks. Well, I wonder, speaking of good, this film is so moving. I remember reading the novel when it came out. So many people were drawn to it. What drew you to this very particular story?
I think the honesty and the kind of bravery of Helen sharing their experience in such a really honest way. I think anyone who's read the memoir can recognize that there's very little artifice to it. It's not a story so much as just a total opening up of a human being and their experiences. And I just found that so brave and also just really, really a really generous thing to do with loss. I felt that it, I don't know, I haven't spoken to Helen about this, but I feel like there would have been a feeling of relief for them in sharing the story, but also I don't know whether they realize the significance of what their work would do for people. It's touched so many people and been so significant.
Well, before we get into all of your interaction with the hawk, I'm wondering how you see this moment of grief. And there's another very poignant moment in the film where in the memorial, she's talking about how her father is really the only one who understood her, and now he's gone. How did you find your way into a character who has just had such an epic loss?
Good question. I think that sort of loss, I've experienced loss in my own life, as most people of the age of 41 have. And I feel like Helen's relationship with their father was really unique and beautiful. It's very rare to see father-daughter relationships portrayed in this way, which is that he was very much a sort of mentor, but also a father and someone who showed Helen how the world worked in his eyes. And a lot of that was the natural world, and to have a passion and love for something. And they were very similar, I think, in their approaches to life and what they found interesting. And I think that happens a lot with families, is that parents align with certain children on certain things. And I think that definitely happened for Helen. And I think I definitely looked on their relationship with a certain amount of sort of jealousy, I suppose, and a feeling of sort of how beautiful for your parent to be the person you admire most in the world. And I I definitely have experienced that, and I think it wasn't hard for me to put myself in Helen's shoes. And I had Brendan Gleeson playing my father in this film, so when he was gone, the absence of him was so huge for me, with all the attachments that I had, that Helen had to Alistair. So it wasn't difficult, but Helen's relationship with their father is something very sacred.
Well, then there's this transference that happens, as I mentioned in the introduction, and anybody who has read the memoir knows, is because she very quickly takes up falconry, and most of her life becomes dedicated to this hawk. How do you see what has happened there with this other living being?
It's really interesting because my job as an actor is not to try and psychoanalyze her too much in the moment, in the sense that I feel like very much my job of the film was to just be driven by what was driving Helen at that point. And I don't think there was a self-awareness going on there. There wasn't do you know what's going to really help me right now is to get an incredibly difficult bird of prey. And but I do think that Helen was driven by sort of a pathological need to try and escape the grief by coming more into contact with a creature that felt devoid of any sort of humanity, I suppose, or the trappings of what we believe to be humanity, which is how it would feel. Do goshawks experience grief and loss? Who knows? And what Helen had attached to Mabel was that she didn't. She was a killer. She was a wild creature, and therefore wasn't burdened by the same human emotion. And that, I think, was a sort of a wanting to kind of morph into that creature was the drive for Helen. But by doing that, fell deeply in love. And so did Mabel with Helen. So I think that there's a lot of learning to be had, that you sort of can't escape it, basically.
I'm speaking with the actor Claire Foy. We're talking about her new film, H is for Hawk, in area theaters on Friday. Well, now I want to get to the filming. I have about 1 billion questions for you after seeing this, because it looks so intense. What level of preparation did you have for going into this?
So to be able to shoot the film, I had to get to a stage of falconry, which meant that I could convincingly portray someone who'd been a skilled falconer for years, that I could control these wild animals if anything was to happen to them or to something on set. And also for myself to feel comfortable enough to act. And I think that was quite a big ask. But I suppose I knew that the film couldn't happen unless I mastered it. I only had 2 weeks before we started shooting. And then we had, obviously, 7 weeks of the shoot. So by the end, I'd done 9 weeks solidly with the birds. But there was no real capacity for failure, really. And I didn't feel afraid. I think I was afraid of myself and my capabilities. But then as soon as I met Rose and Lloyd Buck, who are the sort of handlers, trainers of these goshawks, I knew that I was in really safe hands, because they treat their birds with such tenderness and respect and love, and they're like a family, that I suddenly was like, oh, okay, if I might be able to do it if these two amazing people are trying to help me do it. And that's not always the case when you're learning something in films. Quite often it's like you feel like you don't know what you're doing and that you're failing all the time. But they were just so supportive and kind that I sort of knew that it would be all right.
Was it one bird who was playing Mabel? Mabel is the name of the goshawk in the film, and of course the memoir. Was it one bird?
It was 5. So
Wow.
we had 5 birds, but one of them was male, and that was Yuha, and he would do all the aerial flying. And then we had 4 females, 2 of which hadn't even been born by the time the film was kind of. Dee Dee Gardner, the producer, she bought 2 eggs to hatch at the exact time, so they would be exactly the right age to play Mabel. And then we had 2 other birds who were more experienced, I suppose, in being around people and cameras a little bit.
Well, what did you find? We read so much about how intelligent, despite the bird brain moniker, that birds are incredibly intelligent, and especially when we're talking about hawks. What did you come to understand about these animals?
that they are, wild animals that, we project so much onto them as human beings, so many things that we want to see. I think that what I find really interesting, and Helen touches this on the memoir, is that how birds of prey have been taken by us to mean something powerful and power and sort of aggression. And that wasn't my experience of working with goshawks at all. I found them incredibly sensitive and watchful and curious and interested and peaceful. And oddly, I found that they just wanted peace. They're very isolated birds. They don't, even when they're in a pair, they're not, spending lots of time together. And quite often the female kills the male. So it's not like they're cuddly creatures, but I feel like I felt very maternal towards them. And I found them to be very deep creatures, and was very aware that they were the more superior creature. That's what it felt. Every day I was just sort of in awe of them.
And I was wondering, too, and it's sort of part and parcel of that, but what kind of relationship you're able to develop with them in a time that you were together. I think that everybody wonders how we can relate to an animal, and there is an interesting dissection of this in the film, just the words that civilizations and cultures have used about the relationship between a hawk in particular, a falcon, and human. In this case, it was love, dating back to old cultures. Is it something that you can feel without assigning too much of how humans operate with our own emotions?
I feel that the reason why human beings love having pets is because there's an implicit need that is created there. You become their source of food, you become their sort of home in a way, and you keep them safe. And I think that isn't any different for a goshawk or a falcon or any bird of prey. I think that human becomes their safety, and their sort of elaborate kind of perch in a way. And whether that's that they live in a treetop or they live in your house, I think that that's sort of the same thing that happens. And I think that the mystery always is of what that animal is thinking. And we'd all love to know. But having spoken to falconers, there's always a really fine line between the bird being with you and the bird could choose to leave at any moment. And the only thing that brings them back is that bond. And that bond can only be one of safety and love and tenderness. Because if you treat an animal badly, it will come back to you, but that's not a bird of prey. They'll go. And so I think it's just an inherent thing in us as human beings, and especially with birds of prey, falcons and goshawks and eagles and owls. And we need that wildness, that absolute, utter, like unfettered wildness that we are so far away from, that suddenly having a bird of prey in your living room it gets you right there.
I love this distillation, this naturalist distillation you just had of that. And I wonder for this and or all of your roles, how much of that learning experience remains with you, becomes part of your DNA, and to the extent that does it change you as a person once you get intimately involved with these experiences, these scenarios and characters?
Yeah, I mean, it could, there are periods of my life. We shot this film obviously for almost 2 months, but I was thinking about Helen from, 6 months before that, and I'd read Helen's memoir a year before that, and so they become, if not the background of your own life that you're living, you're living those experiences all day, every day. And whilst it's not that person's actual experience, and nor would I ever convince myself it is, I'm not faking it in a way. I'm attempting to get as close to the thing as humanly possible. And so the kind of, I suppose, the remnants of that are the emotional kind of, what do they call it when there's the aftermath of that? It is significant, and I've learned so much, especially in the last few years, of the jobs I've taken, of going into these worlds and living these lives of people who are so different to me and hold totally different opinions to me, or beliefs that there's so much to learn for me as a human being and take away from. And it all just means that hopefully just a slightly better person every time, hopefully.
We've talked about Helen McDonald. And I mean, it's struck by what you said at the beginning of the conversation, too. It's not yours to judge who the character is. So how did you set up your interaction with her going into the film? Did you want to know as much as possible? Did you want limitations so that you could develop your interpretation of the character?
Well, I feel like it's really interesting. So Helen wrote the memoir 7 years after their father passed away. And then now we're like 10 years on from that as we're making the film, or, when we were making the film. So Helen had already done the most generous thing you could possibly do, and also narrated their own audiobook. So as an actor, I had the distilled emotions of that time, and I also had the voice of the person who'd had those thoughts and feelings and emotion speaking it. So I felt like there was not much more I could possibly ask them to give me. It was all my job to kind of fill in those blanks or attempt to make what was written in the memoir possible on screen. I did meet Helen before we started shooting, but that was that was out of respect and to just say thank you for letting me do it, and to just make sure that I knew what the boundaries of their experience were, and what they wouldn't want, how they wouldn't want to come across, how they wouldn't want to be seen. Certainly not for me to go, how did you feel on that Tuesday in March in, 2000 and whatever. That's not really that I didn't feel like that. That's my job to do all that thinking, really.
I also, might sound a little off topic, but I think actually in thinking how you've talked about going into these roles, when Queen Elizabeth died, I wondered how it was for those of you who had portrayed her in such a way that was so deeply resonant to all of us who watched The Crown. Was there a level of grieving, or how did you feel in that moment when this woman who you had inhabited for so much time was gone?
I think my only real, my feelings were for them as a family. And, I don't know whether that would be the same response if I hadn't played my version of that character. I was always really clear with myself, and I think I had to be very early on because of the weight of the responsibility and also how much I could fail at it. I had to kind of build quite a big barrier for myself between the Queen that everybody knows and is the most famous person in the world to being Elizabeth Mountbatten, who I was playing in those first 2 seasons. I wasn't playing the Queen as we knew her, in 2015 or 16 when the show came out, because I would have been too harmed by that, and I would have also that was a level of expectation I could never reach. So I think that I had, whilst I understand people's perspective of thinking that I felt that I was playing her, there was a distance there for me, which I think was really crucial, and to also respect them as a human being, that I had no right to know their innermost thoughts because they'd never expressed them, nor did they want anybody to ask them. So it was, that was a different job in the sense that was my, but definitely felt the passing of her like everybody did. It was like a collective ending of a period of time, which feels really significant.
Well, Claire Foy, thank you so much for being with us today. The film is really, really moving, and you are extraordinary in it. It was, I think, as you mentioned at the outset, we've all been through grief, and I think this will help so many as we understand the different ways people deal with it. And it's just a beautiful film on top of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really beautiful questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire Foy is an Emmy and Golden Globe award-winning actor. Her latest film is H is for Hawk, which opens in area theaters on Friday. Coming up on The Culture Show, the quest of the Indigenous community to protect a vast Canadian wilderness, how they prevailed, and why it matters to all of us. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
If you really want to know what's going on in this country,
hi, my name is Isaac. I'm calling from Columbus, Ohio.
you have to get away from the extremes and listen to the middle.
This is Samantha calling from St. Louis, Missouri.
On The Middle with Jeremy Hobson, I take your calls live on some of the biggest issues we face.
While I have hope for change, there are so many issues that I feel like are not being discussed on either side.
Join me each week on The Middle.
Tonight at 9 on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Cape Cod Foundation, committed to building resources to support community life on Cape Cod, including environmental conservation, arts and culture, and community development. Learn more at capecodfoundation.org. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra. This month, the E Pluribus Unum Festival explores American music, history, and ideals through performances and in-depth conversations at Symphony Hall and around Greater Boston. bso.org. And Babson College, where you can advance your career with an MBA or specialized master's at the school ranked number 2 best college in the United States by the Wall Street Journal 2025. babson.edu/grad programs.
For that next birthday, holiday, or special occasion, you can give a standout gift. A GBH membership. Thousands of hours of your favorite PBS shows, event deals, and local business discounts. Learn more at gbh.org/gift membership.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Northern Manitoba is a vast northern landscape of rivers, forests, and wetlands. It's one of North America's great wildlife strongholds, a sublime landscape populated by caribou, wolves, and polar bears. Millions of birds are born there every year, birds that migrate through the United States, linking this place directly to our own skies and coastlines. But it's also a land that has been under threat by industrial development, where rivers have been dammed and the water made sick, and from which indigenous populations have been displaced to disastrous and deadly consequences. One of the people leading the effort to protect it is Stephanie Thorassi. She's executive director of the Seal River Watershed Alliance, an indigenous-led partnership of 4 First Nations working to permanently protect the Seal River watershed. That effort is the focus of the documentary We Are Made from the Land, Protecting the Seal River Watershed, screening at the Peabody Essex Museum this Saturday. The documentary is co-produced by Stephanie Thorassi, who joins us to talk about it all. Welcome to The Culture Show. It's a privilege to have you here.
Masicho, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much. And how are you?
I am well, thank you. All the better, frankly, for watching your documentary this morning and understand the extraordinary efforts that you and your peers and family have undertaken. But to back up, for people who don't know this landscape, just describe its expansiveness and what you're fighting to protect.
Well, if you can think about the size, the sheer size of it alone is the same as Costa Rica or 10 Yellowstone National Parks. We have no roads, no industry, no development, no pollution. We are a little piece of heaven, I think, on this planet. It is quiet. You hear nature, you hear the wind, you hear your stomach growling if you're out there and you're hungry, which I just happened to me a month ago. I was out with some family and it's a funny moment, but it helps to kind of picture it when you close your eyes and you feel the wind and the little trees are blowing behind you. Because we're so close to the tree line, we don't have very tall trees where we live. So it's a really beautiful place because you can go for days and not run into another person or a power line or a road. And, I really always thought that this existed all over the world when I grew up. I thought that everybody had this ability to be out and free and wild, and it's only been through my work and through my travels that you're learning that this is actually a really special place. You can still go to the land and see what it looked like in the 1700s and still see the same landscape there. So it's really remarkable when you are able to visit all these places in the world now that are really been taken over by humans and all of our byproducts.
Well, and you've been engaged in this extraordinary effort to protect this land. Where in that effort are you at this point?
We are currently in negotiations right now with the federal government of Canada as well as the provincial government of Manitoba to create a protected space. We've all committed to protecting the entirety of the watershed, all 50,000 square kilometers, different metric system, I guess, for us, but the entirety of it is what we're pledging to work towards. So utilizing federal and provincial mechanisms to create formal protection over the area, but we're also utilizing the Indigenous laws of our communities, the laws that have been on the land for a millennia that have governed us as people. We are really pulling that in first and foremost, and making sure that the words of the people who have been on these lands for millennia are the ones that are helping to make sure we're doing this right. And we are going to continue to do what we've been doing on this land for millennia.
Millennia minus some years, though, because there was displacement that affected your own family. What happened to these communities?
Well, it's only the one community that this happened to specifically, which was my community. In 1954, a photographer came. My community was in a different place at that time. It was called Duck Lake. My people lived off the land. They were nomadic and they followed the caribou herds. And this was during our fall time season. What would happen is my people lived in cabins and teepees and traveled by dog team not that long ago. And so a photographer came and took a photograph of our winter freezer. So for us, our winter freezer, we didn't have power. We utilized the land that we came from. And right now in Manitoba, it's a deep freeze. It's minus 40s right now. So the shore of the lake is our freezer. And so we would harvest food to survive and to live off the land and to thrive, right? And the caribou were our main source of food. And so we would harvest food for now, and we would harvest some food for later in the winter when the caribou migrated away. So we can open our freezer, and our freezer was full. And so if you imagine being on the land for a millennia, for thousands of years, the bones that would be piled up in the freezer would happen over time. And so a photographer came and took a picture of our freezer without asking us why there were so many bones there, assuming that this little group of people that were from the land are the reason for a dip in the population of the caribou. And so without talking to us or asking for our opinions, the federal government moved my people away from the land. The displacement, the sheer sadness and anguish that comes from being taken away from your home and everything you know about the land is what had happened. And as a result, a third of the community died in where we were moved to, the city that we were moved to. And that's where my parents were born. And so in order to survive as children while their parents were in this sadness, this state of basically living, but I don't even know. Sometimes it's so hard to explain the how broken the people were. Well,
this might be a good opportunity to play a little bit of the documentary that we've been talking about, We Are Made from the Land, which will be screened at the Peabody Essex Museum this Saturday. Here's Ernie Buzzador, the late founder of the Seal River Watershed Alliance, discussing the repercussions of this very traumatic and unconscionable, in my words, displacement of people, the Indigenous people, which resulted in, as you say, deaths of a third of the population.
Our society can completely crumble down to just disarray. Kids that grew up in Denver villages, like myself, dysfunctional in so many different ways. We were the troublesome kids. We were starving half the time, and we had to fend for ourselves.
But now there is opportunity thanks to the efforts of you and your colleagues in this effort. And it's made abundantly clear in the documentary all of the conversations you've had, the collaborations you've had to, as you just said, do it right.
Yeah, we have this really amazing time right now to stand up and to write our own story and take charge of our own path and really celebrate our cultures and our lives and say that this moment is not going to continue to define who we are as a people, because we're on the land, we have access to the healing that is there, and we have access to the waters and the magic that is out there. And so we really want to make sure that we save this for the future generations, for my children and great grandchildren, and make sure that no matter what's happening in the world, that they can truly be themselves and look for a positive thing in the future to help kind of anchor them to the ground so that they are successful in whatever they choose. It's a really special time for us.
And I was really struck by what's happening in Canada in addition to what you're doing, because I think if I look at the landscape of the United States, the prism of what's happening in this country right now, where monuments are losing their protected status, Canada has an effort to be more expansive in land conservation and preservation, which is aligned with what you're doing.
Yeah, it's really remarkable that the tides that have kind of come together in this moment. It really helps you to have hope and think that there may be a time for justice, and this really does seem that way. The efforts and the goals of the Canadian government to create more protected spaces came in line with the United Nations COP that happened, and there was an event that happened in 2016 that really raised a lot of alarms for us, and we wanted to make sure that we did everything we could to try to create this protected area. And so it just things kind of lined up, and the dominoes started to fall in the right direction for us finally.
What was the alarming signal that you had?
Well, we had it wasn't a signal. It was a really terrible year for caribou harvesting that had happened. The Canadian government was coming to my community to apologize to my parents and my grandparents for the relocation of my people. And we say that the Dene people are connected to the caribou. And, I really, truly do believe that. When the Canadian government was coming to apologize, the caribou also came, and it didn't, not just one herd, we had multiple herds. They looked completely different. There were thousands of caribou all around my community. And the winter road had opened. It's an ice road almost, but ours is on the eskers, and it opened up, and the gas was really inexpensive at that year, and people came in droves to come and harvest and hunt caribou off of the road. And it was carnage. There was blood everywhere. There was wastage. There was so much people hunting from their trucks and leaving piles behind and loading up people. Somebody came with a semi-truck to load up caribou, and we just were like, this cannot happen. This is crazy. Like, this is not sustainable harvesting whatsoever. This isn't okay. And so the late Ernie was the one who started ringing the alarms and saying, like, what can we do? There's nothing. At that time, we had no say in what happens 5 feet away from our community border, which is just at the lake of the community. We had no say what happens in our backyard, and that's a really big issue, because as you see, like, we couldn't do anything about this crazy caribou harvest. All we could do was ask the people who were coming and staying in the community to leave, but otherwise they could still go outside the community and hunt as many caribou as they wanted, basically, which is what they were doing. And so this protected area initiative that we're doing also combines the shared management with both Crown governments, so that we make sure that we have a say in what happens.
Well, I want to ask you about this, but first of all, reintroduce you. I'm speaking with Stephanie Tharassi, the Executive Director of the Seal River Watershed Alliance. We're also talking about her documentary, We Are Made from the Land, which is screening at the Peabody Essex Museum this Saturday. Now, there is this wonderful opportunity for ecotourism where so much opportunity can be made. Tell me about what you're eyeing for the future so that people respectfully enter this land.
Absolutely. We're not saying people can't come. We're not saying people shouldn't hunt. We're not saying, we believe hunting is a part of conservation. We believe that we can do this work with everybody in mind. We have taken this partnership approach, understanding that it's a huge space, and the best way to do this and the most successful way is to include as many people as possible. And so we really, one of the ways is we have the Seal River, which goes up through 2 watersheds. So it goes into the Hudson's Bay at the end, where we have all of our marine life, where we have beluga whales, where we have the estuary there, we have polar bears, but it also comes from the inland where my community is. You can paddle. It'll take you about 7 days to paddle from my community to the coast. It's 9-bar class 5 rapids. It is incredible. If you like adventure and you want to go somewhere where you won't see another soul, where you paddle by seals that are competing with you for fish, and you might see a caribou crossing. It's God's country. It's incredible, the landscape. When we paddled to the end of Chautauqua, which is right at the base of the Seal, I think we saw 15 bald eagles in a matter of 5 days. And that was just the ones that we noticed, right? It's really beautiful. It was plus 30 the whole time, degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but
I'm not so good with the conversions. I do know it's about 30,000 square miles, to go back to your kilometers translation there.
Thank you. Yeah,
conversion.
It's a really beautiful place, and sometimes it gets hung up because it's hard to put into words something that you love so much. I asked somebody once if they felt the same way that I feel about my home, about a place where they're from, and it was so strange to me that they don't feel this way. They didn't feel this way, and I thought that everybody felt this way about where they come from. And literally my body craves to be on that land and to touch the water and to touch the ground when I'm away for a long time.
I just want to briefly ask you to close in sort of a way the documentary closes, where it's very poignantly stated that you and your people are no longer being told what's good for you. We also meet your daughter in the film. We meet your parents in the film. What is it for you to be in this moment where you do see this being corrected for yourself and for the next generations?
It almost doesn't feel real, the amount of energy, the lives, the heart that is poured into this work from the very beginning, the positiveness that is created, the energy and momentum. It really, like, the past 6.5 years have flown by, and now I have a son that I brought actually with me here. He's a year old. I think about that, and I think about what it means for the next generations coming up, and to give them an opportunity to write their own story and not have something as terrible as what happened to my parents be the only thing that they have for the future.
Well, it was so invigorating, again, to understand your story, all that you've done. I know there is still work to be done, and you're doing it, but it's so nice to be able to talk about something so positive for once. Congratulations, and thank you so much for being here.
Masicho, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Stephanie Tharassi is the Executive Director of the Seal River Watershed Alliance, an Indigenous-led partnership of 4 First Nations working to permanently protect the Seal River watershed. And she's the co-producer of the documentary We Are Made from the Land, which is screening at the Peabody Essex Museum this Saturday. The event coincides with the PEM exhibition Knowing Nature, Stories of the Boreal Forest, which is developed by the Smithsonian Institution Traveling Exhibition Service and made possible by the National Audubon Society. Again, thank you. Coming up, how looking at art could restore the lost art of maintaining an attention span. Mary Grant joins us for that conversation. She's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
walking for years on end in places people aren't usually on foot, the police take notice. This world explorer tells us he's been stopped by authorities 120 times.
Yeah, I can laugh at it now, but it was actually very stressful.
That plus the day's top global news next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Speakeasy Stage, presenting Job, the relentless psychological thriller for the digital age. Now playing through February 7th at Speakeasy Stage. SpeakeasyStage.com.
Support for GBH comes from you and Furniture Consignment Gallery.
We have 4 locations in Massachusetts. We're in Natick, Hanover, Plymouth, and Burlington.
Jay Frucci, owner.
Working with the GBH sponsorship team is very easy, and we're able to narrow down the key messaging, and it's always very concise, but it's very pointed, and we think we're able to communicate our value in a very valuable way.
To learn how GBH can benefit your business, visit gbh.org/sponsorship.
GBH Daily is a newsletter that keeps you informed, connected, and ready to go every weekday morning. You can subscribe today and get it in your inbox at gbh.org/daily.
Welcome to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. It's time for our recurring feature, AI Actual Intelligence, where we tap into the most interesting thinkers in our region. Their insights and observations are totally original and algorithm-free. Today I'm joined by Mary Grant, president of MassArt, who joins us every month. Welcome back.
Great to be here as always, Jared. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I have to start with some congratulations because you are a recipient of the Pinnacle Award this year, which is if people don't know this event, presented by the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, who celebrates a very select group of women every year. You're among this year's honorees. That's happening on January 30th. 1,200 people gather who are changing Greater Boston through leadership excellence in entrepreneurship, management, and lifetime achievement. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I am truly honored because you look at the history of who's received this and the company I'll be in on that day of the other women being recognized, those will be gathered. And so for me, it's a really wonderful personal and professional feeling. It also for me is an opportunity to just lift MassArt in that space because we're doing this fabulous work. And so to have the whole institution recognized and the impact of arts and education feels very important. And years ago, I know that Kay Sloan, who was a prior president of MassArt, received a recognition. I don't think it was called the same thing, but it was a similar meaning from the Greater Boston Chamber. So I so appreciate the Greater Boston Chamber doing this because we don't often take the time we should to just stop, pause, and look at individuals who are trying to make a difference, and they're doing it, lifting up others along the way, working in community, working in teams. So I think for Jim Rooney and the Chamber to take this moment to just say, let's all, particularly in these times, take a break, sit down, celebrate, be inspired. And I feel so honored that I'm going to be part of that, and I'm going to draw inspiration from those other great women that'll be there that day.
I've attended in the past, and it's a really, really inspiring event. And by the way, I should tell you, I should not say this on the air, but I'm going to because I have no filter, that the event is happening so close to our show that I said I wanted to be there to support you, and I asked if I could make it on time, and they said no, they weren't going to shuffle anything, so that I could be the audacity that I had. But I really, really wanted to be there to celebrate you.
I so appreciate that. You are a friend. We'll celebrate another time.
Yes. So I'll be there in spirit.
I know. I'll feel it. So thank you.
So let's talk about attention spans and how art looking and the lost art of art looking can maybe help us with our attention span issues these days.
It's amazing. When I think about what's going on and we think about the devices in our hand, I think right now also with everything that's bombarding us on social media, with the significant challenges and crises we're facing, this becomes even more important because we've got to take a moment and look at the news that's coming in across our phones, across our multiple devices, across across legacy media in some cases. So the idea about slowing down and using art as a tool to focus, to ask questions, to observe a painting or a piece of art in community with others is important. And really taking that time to stop, not just a quick walk through and look at something and move on to the next piece, and you can do that in a museum. You can do that in a gallery. You can do that in your own home with a photograph. And then to think about, what am I seeing here? What didn't I see before? How is this making me feel? And not in a way to defend it with somebody else, but to ask questions, interrogate what you're seeing, and get that brain to process information in a way that is going to benefit you in asking questions about other things.
And we should clarify that we're talking about a lot of time here. Yes, it can be extended minutes, but there's a Harvard class where students are required to look at one piece for 3 uninterrupted hours. Mm-hmm. We just had Marina Abramovich, the artist, on the show not too long ago, and she's doing a master class for the BBC Masterclass series. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about so much of what she was talking about that day, which is just slowing down and having the discipline, because we all can do it, but to just slow down. And in this case, what happens if we train our eyes and our thoughts on a painting, for example, for maybe at least 10 minutes, maybe as long as 3 hours?
3 hours would be, that's a real luxury.
Yes.
That's a real luxury. But it would be tremendous. This technique's also being used in a lot of executive coaching programs because, and I was at something one night last week where this company had actually brought someone in to do this kind of a training with their team, their leadership team. And part of it was team building, but part of it was also the fast pace at which they're trying to make decisions to be able to develop some of the habits of slowing down. And I think that is essential. There's a whole body of literature around that's coming out now talking about critical ignoring, and to be able to think about what should we ignore in a piece of information? What do we need to do to go deeper, to discern the facts of a matter? So there's even evidence around how you set up your screen, going across as opposed to scrolling down. Because when one scrolls down on their devices, they tend to click and click and click, and your attention span is shifting. You're not paying attention. So that space of whether it's 3 hours or whether it's 30 minutes, and it's akin to some of the practices of meditation. It will slow your blood pressure. It will bring your blood pressure down, slow your pulse down, your heart rate. So it's a good thing for your health as well, and to absorb information differently.
Well, it occurs to me that we're also being told that we have a short attention spans, and are we just modifying our behavior based on what we're told? I was just with Ken Burns last night for the Boston Speaker Series, and at the dinner beforehand, somebody asked him about attention spans because his series are very long. We know this from Vietnam and the Civil War, and now the American Revolution, his 6-part series. Is this still an age in which a film such as yours could be made? And he said, of course. And you look at the viewership numbers, you look at the younger people coming to it, you look at the younger people who, because we apply so much of this to younger people in particular, who are listening to podcasts. This is sitting down and listening to an extended conversation, and it's happening. So both things can be true.
They can be true. And, there was I think in 2002, there was a study done by the University of California at Irvine, faculty member out there, and it looked at workers' habits, and it showed that individuals switch from task to task about every 2.5 minutes. And then the study was replicated 10 years later, and it had moved to something like 75 seconds. And now it's at 47 seconds. So there is that. But then there is the ability to, as you said, think about when you're watching a movie and you get deeply pulled in and absorbed. And suddenly the time goes by and you come away from it refreshed. One of the things also educators are talking about, I would support this wholeheartedly for everybody, is pick up a book and read.
Yeah.
Read. Sit still. Find a quiet spot. And at Mass Art, one of the most favorite spots for students to go is our library. They find their way up there, they find a comfortable chair, and they're able to carve out some quiet space. Pick up a book. And even if you only get through 2 pages, the holding of it, the focused concentration, the having to stop and pause and think about it. So I would agree with Ken Burns. Who am I to agree with Ken Burns? But I'm back, you're right up there. But it's true. true, because when something is engrossing and it's informative and captivating, we can sit still, we can pay attention, and we can process information that comes to us that's rich and intellectually stimulating.
Well, we're both avid readers. I was just thinking it would probably be virtually impossible, unless it's a terrible book, to stop after 2 pages.
That's right.
You'll just want to keep going. Let's move to, by the way, if people are just tuning in, I'm speaking with Mary Grant, president of MassArt. There's a kind of a controversy happening right now with the Midtown Hotel in Boston, which, to orient people, it is what it sounds like, a mid-century hotel, low-slung, looks like it was created in the 50s and hasn't changed a moment since. It's right across from the Christian Science Center and Symphony Hall, where I was last night doing the speaker series. Well, the controversy comes to play because they actually have changed on the interior somewhat, and part of that is installing artwork that is of people like Thomas Menino, or of course our former mayor Arthur Fiedler, John F. Kennedy, David Ortiz, Larry Bird. But the label underneath does not give an artist name. It says it was all generated by AI, and a lot of people are upset that a hotel would go to AI rather than reach out to local artists.
So I read this piece and I thought, how nice to focus on something else for a while. So it's one of those things where a lot of things can be true at the same time. So the Midtown Hotel was closed for a number of years. So you have this deficit. You have this, just what you described, physical structure that is pulling down a neighborhood. So there's resources put in to bring it back to life. The artwork, yes. I mean, and first of all, a lot of hotel artwork is not great. Let's face it. Yeah. It's not great. There could have been a bigger sign clarifying what one was seeing. I appreciated the fact that it was labeled as an attempt to elevate local heroes. I did not recognize the rendering of Barbara Walters to save my life. I was like, who is that? Is it Doris Day? I mean, I was puzzled by that one. The rest I got.
Born in Brookline, that's why she was there.
That's right. And I thought, okay, that's some history we may not have known. But the other piece is true, is that here we are in a city surrounded by artists in the art community, from young alums of all of our institutions to earnest students. There is lots of opportunity to think about how you do a call for art, where you would have an opportunity to, in an affordable way, be able to put art on your walls and create a little gallery space, perhaps to give someone their first showing. So perhaps it was the effort to get open quickly, to meet a deadline, and now with all of this, there may be a chance to think about how do you engage with the neighborhood around you and the wonderful resources in your city to elevate and up your game. And I do think it's important because the AI-generated work, some of it can be very realistic, others of it can be very puzzling, some of it can be bad, some of it can be good. But here we are, and I read that and I thought, really interesting point, because businesses are part of a community. So how do you establish those ties and build those relationships? And I think there's an opportunity here to consider how to do that going forward.
And that's part of, as I understand it, that is part of the education at MassArt that aspiring artists and trained artists are receiving, is how to get out into the world. And so they are readily available for their art to be purchased.
Right. There's all kinds of opportunities for that. So I think this could be a little clarion call. I would not, some of I don't think I'd boycott the hotel. Let's give them a chance.
No.
And also, to your point, and some of the Globe coverage of it in terms of a place to stay, reasonable price in the middle of an expensive city. And if you're looking for a place to be able to just kind of lay your head down and go out and explore the incredible city around you, it's not a bad option.
I have to say, I've always loved that hotel. I mean, we're in this age where everything has to be shiny and new and sparkly and big and marble this and gilded that. And I just love that there is this piece of Boston just proudly sitting there. I know it's due to economic reasons, too. It's become very expensive to rebuild in this city or to tear it down and create a new development. But I love that this piece of the past is sitting there because it's an unconventional piece of the past. It's not the old State House or something of that nature.
Well, and I'll give you an example. In North Adams is a hotel called Hotel on North, or Down Street Hotel. But in the lobby is an extraordinary reproduction of a piece of artwork from the artist Stephen Hannock, who's a Berkshire-based artist who's often does Hudson. He looks like the Hudson River School artist. His work is beautiful. And when I worked with Stephen several years ago, he did a painting for a project I was working on. It's valued at $1 million. It's a spectacular piece of work. The original was not going to be put in that hotel, but the hotel worked with Stephen, and he allowed to have a reproduced rendering of it. So when you're in that hotel, you get to see a piece of work that is available somewhere else in the community, but you might not see it. But it was done in partnership with an artist who's part of the fabric of the community, and it's a beautiful addition to the lobby, but it was a different approach to how to do this.
And I don't think you have to know anything about art to be able to feel something that's generated by AI versus something that's done, for instance, by a mass art student or your friend, where you know that the heart and hand are there.
Yes.
We just have about a minute left, but I wanted to ask you about an Ayanna Pressley, Congressperson Ayanna Pressley documentary that you had the opportunity to screen at Mass Art recently.
It was incredible. It was 2 Saturdays ago, and it's a documentary called She Dared to Dream, made by Abby Ginsberg, and it was screened in partnership with the Roxbury International Film Festival. And when Ayanna talks about the title of the film, she was very clear that She Dared to Dream was really her mother dared to dream, to elevate the work of social justice and to create a pathway for her daughter. Ayanna talked beautifully and profoundly about the importance of hope as an active means of moving forward. It was a room filled with community folks on a very tough time in our country, and to be inspired and to know that we have that kind of leadership and an individual working so hard on all of our behalf and letting hope be a driver, not passive hope, but active, action-based hope. So I would encourage everyone to watch it if you can. It's 28 minutes long, and it's beautiful and it's powerful, and Abby is an extraordinary filmmaker. She also did a film on Barbara Lee, the incredible congresswoman and now mayor of Oakland, and so Abby is focusing women of color who are stepping into political life and leading and making a difference, and it was beautiful and hopeful. I mean, just at one point in the conversation, Ayanna was speaking from the heart, and we were all with her, and it just left everyone leaving that day feeling better and empowered and hopeful and knowing we can work to make a difference.
Well, again, if people are looking for that documentary to see it for themselves, it's called She Dared to Dream. Mary Grant, president of Mass Art, always great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Wonderful to be here with you, and thank you.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow or join us live at the Boston Public Library for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Callie Egger and I will have a full recap of this morning's Oscar nominations. Plus, the Williamstown Theatre Festival has a surprise announcement. It's not happening. And why the rush to rewind. Online, people are living for Sweet 16 as in 2016. Remember, no reservations required to join our studio audience. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Spend your afternoon with us. Stay with us for GBH's All Things Considered at 4 and Marketplace at 6:30. But first, the world. A global view of today's headlines from the World Newsroom. Right here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Subaru of New England. Wherever New England takes you, the all-wheel drive Subaru Outback is designed to keep you moving through every season. Subaru